What's up, everybody? Welcome to I was gonna title this "Emergency Theme Parking Edition." Emergency. we have a D23 recap to go over, but we are 2/3 of the theme parking crew. OG is, well, he's fancy. He's still at D23. Actually, I think he's still there. He said he wouldn't get back till late tonight, so I was like, well, we'll have plenty of coverage of it this week. So it's Vash and I. Going through this Vashua, if you will, according to Follow the Bradley Fun. Vashua, I always like that. What's up, Bradley Fun? What's up, everybody in here? But obviously, Disney had a little expo last night, and we're going to go through it and talk about it. I'm curious what you guys in the chat think. Obviously, Vash and I've had we've talked about this a little bit. I've kind of got the lay of the land of most of the I guess theme park creator sphere out there for the most part, kind of what they think about this, which I think it kind of, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody being like, oh, blown away by this one, which kind of falls into kind of what I think we've all been saying for a while is like, you weren't going to get a whole lot. And even though the things we did get, you kind of didn't get a lot of details, which was kind of the interesting theme of the evening on some of it. But I actually watched the whole thing. I was at Universal last night, and then my phone died because I don't know why. I have a new phone, but I lost, so I wasn't able to watch it until I got back to the hotel, and I caught a little bit of the end of on the way home. It was interesting how they did it, though. It was kind of like a variety show, I guess, like little retro, like a Tonight Show type vibe. It seemed like from like the 70s or something.
Right. Yeah. I think with Neil Patrick Harris, it basically was a Neil Patrick Harris show. I think they gave him a lot of directorial permission, right, in order to craft the show the way he wanted. And so it starts out, Jared, which is kind of bizarre. It starts out with like this musical act featuring a lot of audio animatronics, both past and current, right there, which was a little bit bizarre. It also had a gal with a costume of a table and the Madame Leota thing.
Yeah. Some of it was interesting choices. And when I talked to you earlier, I was like, I'm going to rewatch it on the way home because it's about a 2-hour drive on the way home. And you were like, just fast forward to like the 40-minute mark. And that's basically if you're going to rewatch this, 40 minutes in. And then I probably hit 75% of the time just fast forwarding through like the random songs, and they would have going
right.
Like, Sheryl Crow gets 2 songs, and you're like, why do we have 2 songs for Sheryl Crow? Sure about this, but yeah. So it's a little bit of things here and there, which we'll talk about. But I mean, he was, I think, knowing Neil Patrick Harris, it was very him. And I think you're right. I think it was very much like it kind of just took the vibe of him, and obviously he does Broadway and stuff like that. So there were a couple of chuckles when they had the one guy with he plays Fix It Felix. I forget that guy's name. He's got that Southern accent. They had some stuff that was okay. It was mostly them kind of off the riff there, but John Stamos made an appearance. I guess there's that.
Yes, he did. Which he is a huge Disney Parks fan. This is kind of funny because there was a little exchange where he's like, "Hey, did you see that they're having an auction, tomorrow?" And it's like, "Oh, really?" Because John Stamos is kind of famous for buying a whole bunch of stuff via auction. But outside of that, I mean, it was a lot of like filler, not only just sing along or song numbers, but also to like these very awkward comedic moments right there. And Neil Patrick Harris constantly making the joke of like, oh, yes, I'm Father from Carousel of Progress, and I'm going to go ahead and take you through all of this and kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know if this is working.
He had also a weird voice, too. Like I think he was trying to do the thing from Carousel of Progress, but it just came, I don't know. Parts of it just seemed odd for it, I guess. And there were moments, too, where I think they were really anticipating like a big audience reaction. And when it didn't happen, you could tell that because it's like, people that aren't normally on stage, they just kind of didn't really know what to do. They're like, oh, they were supposed to laugh at this, keep going. They just kind of awkwardly would go through it, but I mean, it was interesting, if to say the least. But we do have a 5 right off the rip from Cliff Flicks. What's up, Cliff? Says, if you are Universal Creative today, how do you feel about your 10-year answer to Disney's next 10 years? The arms race is on. That very much is true. The arms race is on. I think if you're Universal Creative, you're probably like everybody else being like, I guess I can determine more when I get more details, maybe. And we'll go through it and talk about it. But one thing about this is like, even if you're excited about some of these things, you don't have a lot of details to go off of. Timelines or what's this going to look like. And there were some things that they did announce the Spaceship Earth stuff, which again, we'll talk about, but it was like really quickly. It's like, just coming soon. It's like, what does that mean? Like, it's funny, but I will say I did have a little bit of redemption. We went to Universal. It was UOAP night last night, which was the pass holder night, it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty busy, but they had the Simpsons carnival games were free, so everybody could walk up and do them. So we had the kids over there doing stuff, and they had they had the big basketball hoop that you do it on. And my daughter wanted to do it. And I was like, okay. And then she's like, no, Daddy, you need to do it too. And I was like, okay. I haven't shot a basketball. Basketball used to be my jam. I hadn't shot a basketball in like a year and a half. And I was like, this could be rough. And by the time I go to shoot, there's probably like 30 people in line. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And listen, I made the basket. It went right in swoosh. And I acted like I just had been doing that all day. And I just did one and walked off. I was like, you know what? Hey, they were impressed and I walked off. I was just glad it wasn't an air ball at that point. But it was fun though. There was they had Marty, Doc, and Einstein you could meet, but not at the same time. They split them up, so it was Doc and Einstein and Marty. So we never caught Marty, but we did catch Doc with Einstein. So that was kind of cool. So I was happy to get that, and they had some other meet and greets, and it was nice. It was a nice evening just to chill out in the park there a little bit and do all that stuff there. But before we get going, here's what they hated the chat. We got Stu by Rick. We got Storybook Sorceress. We've got, let's see, we got Cliff in here. We got Mickey, My Spirit Animal. Remy D, Follow the Bradley Fun. Let's see, we got Theme Park Casual. Rudio. We got all sorts of people in here. So thank you guys for being here on this late, short notice here. This emergency theme park stream, if you will. So we're going to start with Disneyland. And then we'll get to Disney World, and we might hit a little bit of the international stuff, but obviously they didn't go real heavy on the international stuff. So if you're unaware, D23 Expo, they do this every 2 years, and this panel in particular is when they, reveal a lot of the stuff coming to the theme parks. So obviously off of 2 years ago, a lot of announcements, a lot of speculation of what they might announce, and obviously the first one with Josh Tomorrow in charge, with Thomas Masloom, head of the experiences side. So it was definitely a different show than what we've seen previously, because Josh Tomorrow ran him on his own basically the whole time. So it was definitely a different vibe altogether as soon as you start out there. But let's hit into Disneyland. So one of the things they announced, well, which one you hit it first? You want to talk the Avengers Campus stuff?
Yeah, let's start with Avengers Campus first, because Disneyland we'll get into that story is very complicated. But Avengers Campus is probably the one that we should probably start out with, because, well, guess what? That is the list of purchasation for the Walt Disney Company when it comes to these new projects. At least when it comes to Disneyland Resort. We know that Infinity Defense and Stark Flight Lab, as you can see right there. By the way, a lot of this footage, gathered by Scott Gustin, Drew Disney Dude, Tom Bricker, right? There's been a lot of contribution here, and I always try to get accreditation in there because obviously, they deserve the credit, but I just wasn't able to have enough time to set this up properly. So you're looking at a little bit more of a generic slideshow, but hopefully it provides you some visuals of what we're getting right here. So they have this model out there of Infinity Defense and of Stark Flight Lab, right? And a lot of people looking at this model, they were like, I don't know, it's just not necessarily super impressive, and some people were actually disappointed by actually seeing it, which was very interesting. But we know that it is coming. It is currently being constructed right there. And, it's this Stark Flight Lab's going to be this Kuka Arm attraction. There's not much in the way of visuals there. We know the layout now with this model, but, there's still some questions on substance for this thing. A lot of people have been mostly, excited for Infinity Defense. And that is, I think, version 3 or 4 of the Marvel ride in this specific spot right here that has been teased at various expos going all the way back to 2017. It's really, really interesting because a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to be screen-based. And, Disney did allude to the fact that they might actually feature some physical props and set pieces, but we hadn't seen those yet. And so last night during the Experiences Showcase, that occurring at, 7 p.m. California time right there, that Jared has taken us through there. They did reveal the visuals on the inside. So apparently they have filmed some of the visuals that will be on screen and so forth. with the cast of the Avengers while on the set of Doomsday, which is a pretty good deal. We saw Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. We saw Robert Downey Jr. I think we saw Anthony Mackie in there as well. We saw some Avengers. But the thing that we actually saw that was very, very interesting from the ride itself is the fact that you were actually going through these set pieces. We saw like a huge Thor's hammer that was featured, and the idea might be that these pin particles that Ant-Man has maybe get onto us, or maybe we activate and we are shrunken down in size, and that's why we get these huge prop pieces that you actually see right there. Interestingly enough, we can see maybe the Black Panther kind of Wakanda statue right there, and obviously Thor's hammer on screen as well. Really, really interesting stuff. I will say, Jared, it's a little bit weird though, because to introduce you to this ride, you would think, oh, well, get one of the solid Avengers, right? Robert Downey Jr. maybe coming on in here and going, hey, recruits, we need your help or whatever. You could do something like that. You could do something like, I don't know, maybe Steve Rogers, Captain America, maybe even Anthony Mackie, Captain America. You do plenty of different things in this space. No, they're going with Iman Vellani from Miss Marvel. That's just a weird character to use in this way. I don't know, Jared. Is it because it's the only one they can get? I don't know quite why they're choosing that specific character, especially when you consider that Disney already got heat for utilizing streaming only characters for like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Hondo, right? Mm-hmm. And now you have Miss Marvel, somebody who a lot of people necessarily aren't familiar with because, well, nobody saw the Marvel movie. And nobody actually saw the TV show. I know there are some fans of the TV show, and I heard it's great. It's fantastic. It's awesome. It's just familiarity. A little bit of a stretch. What do you think about this, Jared?
I agree. It is strange because I would I guess you would just call it the normie crowd. Are they even aware of her, like you were saying? And they've I don't even remember the Avengers video game that came out. I think it came out in 2020 that lost Square Enix a ton of money. And one of the criticism of that game was it heavily focused on Miss Marvel. Right. It was not like the main characters that people were wanting to play as. I suppose it could be just someone narrating it, so they just wouldn't want to stick a prominent figure up there to walk you through it, sort of thing. But I did think that was a strange choice for that. Another thing I would point out, some people had questions about, was obviously Robert Downey Jr. in here as Iron Man. He's also playing Doom in the Doomsday coming up, the Avengers Doomsday. And people were like, well, this is... Now, I think this goes into, and we haven't talked about it a ton on our streams or anything, but I've been felt this the entire time, and I think the Doomsday trailer kind of shows this as, I've always felt like it's going to be some sort of bait and switch with RDJ as Doom, because a lot of the very heavy rumors is that RDJ is going to come back in the next phase as Iron Man, as Tony Stark. When you look at that Doomsday trailer, there are clearly two different Dooms. When you see them up close, the eyes are one is RDJ and one is somebody who is not RDJ. Now, it could be, when you talk about Doom, it could be a Doom bot, it could be a lot of things, but I get the impression there's probably going to be some sort of bait. It would be strange if they were not doing that, something down that road, and introducing RDJ's Iron Man in an attraction is not going to open until after Doomsday comes out, which would cause a lot of confusion amongst people, I would assume.
Yeah, I would think that would cause a little bit of confusion. This is the problem that they've had historically with these kind of projects, right? Theme park projects, they take years to gestate. They take years to, fundamentally develop. And even the timeline that we're working on with this specific attraction, this has been in the works since roughly 2015, maybe even before that, to get Marvel concepts into these parks right here. So this is like the third or fourth iteration of this specific ride. And obviously, Jared, a lot has changed within those 10 years, especially as it concerns Marvel. I think they obviously were trying to capitalize off the success of Infinity War and of Endgame, which is why you feature like a King Thanos type storyline right here, and why it feels very phase 3-ish or so of Marvel, and maybe perhaps not the current phase, whatever phase this is in right now, of Marvel as it currently exists. So that's kind of one of the issues. Now, Obviously, one of the benefits to maybe having a screen-based attraction is that you can kind of switch scenes out as you actually journey along with, along your journey in this attraction to actually feature some more of those modern characters, maybe be the multiverse, sling rings, whatever. But it is, it's like, okay, do we do what's hot now? Do we do what worked before? I think that's the fundamental question that Imagineers are having right now, especially as it relates to Kevin Feige. Obviously, he wants to promote the latest and greatest, so it's all up in the air. I think they may have gone safe and featuring stuff that people are probably most familiar with, that being Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, rather than just latest and greatest. I don't think they want to pull a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge with this specific land right here. Also, too, we heard Jeremy Renner actually coming back as Hawkeye for this attraction. That would be the first time that I have seen that Jeremy Renner himself has worked with Marvel again. So that was very, very interesting to have that name specifically uttered by Kevin Feige for this attraction.
Yeah, I thought that was cool because I like Jeremy Renner. Obviously, his story of that horrific snowplow incident where, I mean,
of course,
he clearly almost died, and he was gravely injured coming back, and he said some things about Marvel around the show that weren't, I guess, Marvel Disney, that he wasn't the most glowing. So it was cool to see him back in there, and I agree. I think, and Remy D even kind of pointed that too, is like, taking things that are proven commodities, put them into the rides. It makes sense because they also probably don't want to take the risk of assuming something that they think might be popular, and then you build an attraction around it and you're like, oops, nobody cares about this thing here or whatever it is. So I can understand that. And obviously it's Disneyland. I don't have the most expertise about Disneyland, but I think going with proven commodities is the better way to go. Whatever you think about the attraction, I mean, we've seen Kuka Arm attractions. This one's interesting in the fact that basically the Kuka Arm is the attraction and not the thing that, it's just an interesting way to do that. So we'll see what that does. But I mean, listen, I think if you throw Robert Downey Jr. into anything with Marvel, that's probably a good start, because that's what most of the people will look at when it comes to the MCU, is him and Thor and things like that. So I agree. It's probably a very safe bet here to do that. But I also think more than likely it makes sense to, if you think about RDJ coming back as Tony Stark, could have some more lasting power, I think is probably what we'll see, but we won't find that out until probably Secret Wars would be my do after that. But that is interesting. And they did have some announcements. We're not going to go through it on this stream, but they did reveal the X-Men cast and some other pieces there, which I will say the X-Men cast looks pretty solid from what they're shown so far. Adam Driver's playing
Mr. Sinister.
Yes, Mr. Sinister, which I was like, that's solid casting. Like, he's good. Now we still don't know Magneto. I don't think they're going to name him till probably the second movie. I imagine the first X-Men movie is not going to involve him yet. That'll be like a tease at the end, and then you'll have involving Magneto and some of those. But yeah, so far it looks pretty solid when it comes to the X-Men casting. We'll see what they do there. But yeah, this one, I mean, if in terms of Disneyland, what is the hype or anticipation level for this attraction? I've heard some people being really like not really sure what this is. Is it high, or is it just kind of like, oh, we'll see what it does sort of thing?
It's a little mixed. It's a little average, right? Because previously, I think Marvel attractions haven't been all that well received based on the level of previous investment. I'm talking about like the Iron Man attraction that's a little bit like Star Tours in Hong Kong, for example, or Mission Breakout taking over Tower of Terror, Spider-Man Web Slingers. People and their association with Marvel in parks just hasn't risen to the level of maybe some other franchises, especially Villains Land and so forth, where people are extremely excited for those specific attractions. Here, though, I think the enthusiasm has dimmed just a little bit, and that goes beyond even the state of the current Marvel franchise as it stands. We'll see what Doomsday actually does with all of this. But I think people, they've been waiting for this for 10 years. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and we've seen previous iterations of this attraction that were far more ambitious than what we're getting. When you see, I don't know, the Stark Flight Lab paint shaker attraction, it's kind of like, is this really going to do it here for many people? It just doesn't look quite as ambitious as something that you would think Marvel would provide, especially given the success of that franchise, at least historically. So it's just a little mixed. Avengers Campus has never really been that like, oh, it's the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge of Disney California Adventure. It's just not felt that way. It's just it's very small, it's very condensed. Architecturally, it's not super visually interesting. So I think people have kind of reconciled with the fact that it's going to be more of maybe perhaps the same. We'll see though. Could be really great. I mean, this Infinity Defense attraction has every single ability to be the best ride in California Adventure. We'll see if it actually lives up to that role, or if it's going to play second fiddle to maybe Mission Breakout, Raiders Wings Racers, and the like right there.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like one thing I'm noticing of Disneyland projects is these things tend to really linger on, especially compared to Disney World lately. It's like this one's been 10 years in development. Obviously, we'll talk about Avatar. These things seem to just linger out there, which I would imagine makes the fan base very, I don't know. I guess it would give you some hesitation about anything that's said, because like, when's it going to open? What are we going to get here? So that is an interesting thing about Disneyland. And I will say this, it was pretty Disney World heavy in this. There was some Disneyland stuff in here, but obviously not a ton in here. But they did say this was going to open in 2028. So they did give a little bit of a timeline here on this one. No, they did not give any specific opening dates for anything. But they did say this one was 2028. So we don't know if that's early or late or whatever in 2028.
I'll go ahead and elaborate on that point as well. Some people were surprised by that date, given the fact that this has been development for so long and has been constructed for years now. But the thing is that the shell of Infinity Defense was just recently closed up. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. They still have a lot of interior work to do, obviously, as you saw in some of those videos there of the site and interior spaces and everything else. I'm not surprised that it's going to be 2028. I know a lot of people were, but I thought 2027 was just a little bit early. So 2028, it looks like, for this attraction, which means maybe perhaps that pushes everything out as well. Obviously, you know, for teams working in Disneyland Resort, you know, I think they're going to be like the bulk of the team works on one, then the bulk of the team works on the next, and you know, it's not quite consecutive. It's more I'm sorry, it's not quite concurrent, it's consecutive, right? So it's one after the other. So we'll see on this whole thing. Again, though, I think a lot of people are looking at this and like, okay, well, Disney's got to do their little synergy thing. So we'll get Avengers. I think a lot of people are more excited about Coco, and we did have a little of information on that. Real fast, Stark Flight Lab going to be featuring Anthony Mackie, Robert Downey Jr., and Brie Larson. Which, again, it's kind of like, okay.
That was funny to me. Because Brie Larson, interesting enough, has had like a redemption arc.
Yes.
In the past years. Obviously, she had a lot of heat for some stuff she was saying around whenever, you know, Endgame was out there. And then obviously had Captain Marvel in between. And there was, you know, even some of those awkward interviews where it clearly seemed like some of her co-stars were not the most fond of her. If you were reading into body,
very much.
Oh. That's the one.
Peter Parker, you know, stuff like that. But it's like lately, like you know, Brie Larson's had, you know, she was in the Mario movie, so it's interesting to see her come back. She also had a quote, like they asked her on the red carpet not that long ago if she's gonna be involved in MCU stuff. She's like, I don't know if they want me or not. Like she just seemed very like, oh, that's not a good sign there.
It's really interesting, Brie Larson there. Look, I have no problem with her. I've actually championed a redemption arc for her, and she has, you know, she hasn't said anything that's like, oh, it's gonna irritate this portion of the franchise or the other. She's not really like a Rachel Zegler in that she just can't help herself. She has. I think she got some bad advice early on in her career, and she's taking a different tact, and she's become far more fan oriented. We saw her at Epic Universe actually when that, you know, opened, and she was walking through Super Nintendo World and all of that. You know, I am for the Brie Larson redemption arc. I'm not, you know, displeased that she's going to be featured in this attraction at all. It was just kind of interesting, the choices that they're actually making currently right now, just given the popularity and success of maybe some other characters out there, and a lot of people asking, hey, where's Steve Rogers, you know?
That would be one, I know, where it's like, and I think it's because they really want the Anthony Mackie version to be the Cap, but it's like,
right.
I mean, it's just people gravitate towards Steve Rogers, and it's like, you're not having him in here. It's like, okay, especially when we're talking about Avengers. He is the first Avenger and things like that. But I suppose with Brie Larson too, you do have, you know, when you're a good looking woman, you can kind of get away with some redemptions are easier when you're really good looking. And you can kind of like listen, guys, I'm gonna chill out a little bit. And they're like, hey, you know, I like her now. Like, it doesn't take much sometimes if you're
that's true. That's true. And she can fly. And if it's Dark Flight Lab, I guess, you know, there you go.
Yeah.
So they got a little bit of that right there. But as I alluded to before, let's go ahead and put on a little bit of visualization for the upcoming Coco attraction, which
very interesting because it's well, obviously they also announced Coco 2 is going to be coming out, which is going to be a little bit older version of Miguel that they kind of revealed at D23. And now this ride is that featuring it's from Coco 2, right? Is the Coco ride?
No, actually. They actually came out and said, no, this is going to be a next chapter story for Coco 1, but obviously include elements from both films. Okay. Erroneously placed right there. That's Encanto, the mule right there. I thought I updated that, but fair enough. You got the little mule there from Encanto. No, this is I think that's the idea, is that you are going to be going through Hector Rivera's museum. Obviously, he's been redeemed since Coco, right? And so he's had an illustrious past that's been revealed, and obviously Ernesto de la Cruz stole so much of his stuff right there. Now it's all been reclaimed, and now they've established a museum in which you actually walk through at first. So that's where you get the Hector statue there in the courtyard. This is the queue area for this attraction. They've been pretty clear now with some of these announcements, whether it's like the the earnings call and everything like that, that this specifically is an attraction just by itself. A lot of people were hoping for a themed land or maybe a themed Mexican village and so forth. It just looks like this is going to be just a simple ride and queue kind of combination. We might be getting more in terms of maybe redressing of some surrounding areas, but for this, just ride, just queue. You're walking into the courtyard, you're seeing Hector's statue, and you're going through, and apparently you're going through Miguel's memories, perhaps, of his time in the Land of the Dead and everything else. So this is updated concept art that you're actually seeing right there, showing that it is going to be a boat ride, and it's going to feature no height requirement, which is very interesting because I was, perhaps hoping that this might be a two-story attraction in order to give some more ride length to this space that this is actually occupying. If in fact this is going to have no height requirement, then we can safely presume that maybe there might not be any drops associated with this, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know a lot. Now, I know from you guys talking at Disneyland that this is going to a very tight area. So it doesn't surprise me that this is just a ride itself. But I will say from what they're showing, like Coco honestly, it's a really good movie. It's one of the better ones, original ones Pixar's done for a while. And visually it could be really, really cool. Like this scene here where you're entering into all that stuff. And I think when you're looking at what I've said this before too, it's like, what do people tend to always gravitate toward as like their favorite attractions of all time? It's a lot of times these dark rides, these dark boat rides and things like that. So kind of a little bit of in that spirit. And I think, realistically, it's probably really hard to kind of screw this up. Like you're just about a boat ride that's all ages, that it's going to feature Coco, some good visuals. I don't think it takes a lot here. You don't have to do anything groundbreaking to really do this IP justice in many ways. They are continuing I don't know if it's a bad thing. I won't know until the ride opens, but Disney tends to continue the story in their attractions. I think that's one difference between Universal and Disney is that right there. A lot of times Universal will, you go on a Harry Potter attraction that is, from those movies. So you're like, whereas Disney tends to want to continue the story on like Tiana's Bayou Adventure and some of these other ones. So I suppose with Coco 2 coming out, maybe the ride is supposed to be like a, in-between story, I guess you could say, perhaps.
It sounds like an in-between story, especially with Hector's museum being established, right? Because if we remember in the beginning of Coco, Hector didn't have anything. He was a nobody kind of thing. So obviously it's next chapter in that way. But it might take the tact, I will say, of maybe an Ariel's Undersea Adventure, right? Where you have maybe Scuttle, I guess, serenades you and says, oh, it was a long story and blah, blah, blah. And then you go through the, book report version of the attraction. They might be setting something like that up. It kind of sound like they were. But they were also very adamant that Coco 2, elements be be part of this attraction as well. And that's the interesting thing too. You know, you have a more grown-up Miguel, as you perfectly illustrated there, Jared. You have a more grown-up Miguel. It's kind of a future, obviously, story. He's like a teenager or whatever, and it's a little strange. Okay, that's fun. Ernesto de la Cruz does come back, and he seeks his revenge. Remember me! I'm sure is going to be the line stated right there. That should be a whole lot of fun. But that movie actually comes out in 2029. A lot of people were like, "Whoa, that's kind of far out." Do you believe, Jared? Because I know Vixen. She's like, are they setting it in that timeline specifically in terms of release date to coincide with the opening of this ride? I do believe maybe there's some substance to that because 2029 is kind of where I have pegged historically Coco to have opened for Disney California Adventure, and that would follow obviously the opening of Adventures Campus. What do you think?
It's possible. I mean, I think it could be one of those things that maybe they had a different approach under Tomorrow with Cohen's, maybe more what you would call synergy of movie releases. At least they anticipate being really big movie releases. And I think Coco 2 will be huge for them because we've seen with Pixar in recent history, the sequels have no problems that are established properties. It's the original stuff they've had an issue get going. So if you're looking at this like a real big movie, coincide it with a new ride, I could see him doing it. It also could be, I know, again, Disneyland just builds slower too. I mean, especially like, I'm not saying Disney World, their speed of construction is up, anywhere near, say, Universals or stuff like that. They may be moving quicker with Tropical Americas, but maybe it's also just coinciding with they were looking at the construction timeline and they're just like, well, let's just do it this way. And also animation takes a while to make. So maybe it's part of that. Maybe I don't know when they greenlit Coco 2, but I think it's one of those that they're really looking at. That's probably going to be a pretty easy $1 billion movie if they do anywhere near what Coco 1 was. And, obviously I think coinciding out there, that could be part of it. We could be, so this was kind of like a Michael Eisner thing of a lot more synergy of these rides. If you remember correctly, I believe they had Splash Mountain because the movie Splash was coming out. That had nothing to do with that ride, but it's like, the audience will put these things together and it's like, I guess, but it could be a little bit of a return to that. So it's definitely possible. But I think, it won't be on by the time I go out there because we're going to go out to Disneyland, I think, next year. But this is one where I think they would love to do this at Disney World in the Mexico Pavilion, but I don't believe, I've talked about numerous times, you could not put that in that pavilion unless you were basically going to completely gut and change it because it couldn't handle the demand of what Coco bring in there. And that would be interesting too. I wonder if some of this concept stuff, because I know they've tossed the idea around. Maybe this is some of the stuff they'd kind of planned for that and they kind of brought it over here to do it here. Because I had heard years ago they were really wanting to do it, but they kind of came to the same determination. It's like, this pavilion can't handle all the crowds that would come in for this. And if you look at the Grand Fiesta Tour now, it's like that queue is very small. If you have like a 20-minute wait, it's like almost out the switchbacks there. Right. So, that part's going to be interesting. But I think it'll be cool. Like, again, I think Coco is great. And my family called me a monster because I didn't cry when we watched it. But I felt like I knew when I was supposed to cry. It was emotional. I'm just not a crier for the most part. But my family has an ongoing joke about I didn't shed a tear when Mama Coco told her the story. I'm like, it was emotional. It was a good movie. I'm just not a crier type, I guess.
Remember me, Jared? No, I get you. I understand. I can see that. Look, it's a very emotional film for those who do cry, those who do connect to Pixar, and a lot of people have an emotional connection to this movie, which is why I think Coco is actually maybe look forward to more than Avengers Campus, if that illustrates just the level of enthusiasm maybe for both these attractions. It's very interesting. So I want to go ahead and point out this specifically right here. Like Storybook Sorcerer said in your chat, Jared, it looks like they said that his memories from the first movie will be featured, so they're not going completely off target. I do think that's true. I think they want to go with the tried and true, go with the thing that everybody recognizes, give them those greatest hits, but do it in kind of a story-oriented way, which could be interesting. You see these diverging paths right here for this waterway. I do wonder if they're going to have like a little switch mechanism to take you either one side or the other. depending on how those boats are and where they stack up and everything else. The other thing too is 2-row boats right there. It's a little different from the concept art that I remember seeing before, and this feels to me a little bit like Navi River Journey, its construction and everything else.
Yeah.
So I think it's where they're going. Not as large a boats as maybe like Pirates of the Caribbean or the Del Tiempo ride at the Mexican Pavilion in Epcot, or even Small World. These look to be smaller, which would make sense given the small footprint that it currently resides on.
Well, that's a good point. And with that tight space, maybe they do have some switchbacks in here to really take it. I mean, they could have a really unique, path in here that really utilizes that tight space. And I know that's been the biggest question mark. And not if Coco would work, because I agree. I think Coco is definitely something people want. But it's just like, how are they going to make this work? Because it wasn't like a back road, essentially, of Disneyland is where they're kind of putting this.
Yes, essentially, yeah, with a bunch of palm trees and so forth that line the exterior of Disneyland Resort itself. I mean, this like butts up right to the street there, whether it be Catella or Disneyland Drive. It is surprising where they are putting this, and a lot of people worry about ride length. A lot of people worry about how ambitious this can possibly be in that space. I know I have some big questions about that. Rogue Attraction coming in there, though, that's not high capacity. I know. And it's like, what is going to happen there? So a lot of open questions about this. We weren't given almost any details about this, which is why you were seeing the same concept artwork go over and over and over again. And the only thing they had representing any at all Coco at the Imagineering Pavilion there at the Expo was a statuette of Hector Rivera. So not a name, not an opening timeline. This is just all we got. And that's kind of the theme of the whole thing of what they did present. It was, you would get a little bit of concept art and then very vague details, and then it would just kind of be either opening soon, it might give you a year, and that was kind of it. Like, that was the very interesting part about this, of the details they did give, how surface level they were. Which was about the end of, I wonder if this is a different strategy moving forward with Disney in how they present this, because I'll just say, I've made the case many times they might be better served long term to go this route, but you have the issue of the fan expectations, and if that is something they over the next few D23s, they really try and kind of bring that down to a level that they would like, could be interesting if that's the case, or it's just an off year and they're just like, listen, we had a bunch last year, we're not going to give you a lot of details, because obviously whenever Disney releases concept art, what do people do? They dig into the concept art, and then it changes and people get frustrated. Maybe tomorrow has saw that as the chairman and was just like, okay, we're going to take a different approach here. Maybe we'll see. I think we come to more of a conclusion on that maybe at the next one, if it's kind of a very similar thing. You're like, okay, this is clearly a direction that they're going with this when they're revealing some of these things. But we'll see on that one. We'll see on that one as well. So let's go ahead and turn our attention towards the third attraction of Disney California Adventure's future. Let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen, because it is Avatar. Now, obviously, listen, we all remember that amazing earnings call, the first one back for Bob Iger, taking the helm as CEO this second time around, obviously coming back after his predecessor in Bob Chapek kind of crashed and burned when it came to the board and maybe some shareholders. That Q1 fiscal year 2023 earnings call, not so well received. And so Bob Iger comes back, and so for the fiscal year 2023 quarter 2 earnings call, his first one back, he said, hey, we're bringing Avatar to Disneyland. And that was it. Then it was labeled an Avatar experience is coming to Disneyland. And then pretty much nothing for a long time until I believe it was at the D23 Expo in 2024 that was revealed. Maybe there's some announcements around there. I can't quite remember the history off the top of my head. But it was like, okay, this is not just an experience, like a lot of people said, meet and greet. No. This is going to be a land. This is going to be a huge Avatar project. And I do believe the D23 magazine back in the day said it's going to be on the same level as Disney's Animal Kingdom version of Pandora, which is very significant. And you'll remember, right, when I was at Orange Grove 55 right there, and OG and I would constantly tell people, hey, look, listen, you don't have the CEO of the Walt Disney Company come out on an earnings call to talk about how Avatar's coming to Disneyland without something substantial behind it. This is not meet and greet. This is not a Disney Parks blog post. This is something far more significant right here. And I, was championing this even before it came out that this was going to be a large scale for real project. But things have gone very interesting at this D23. So at the first day of the expo, obviously with the media walkthrough, people were introduced to a model, and you can see the work on that model right now of this thing being placed in a corner of the Imagineering Pavilion right there. I believe that was Thursday the media walkthrough was.
Yeah.
And so people were like, hey, look, an updated model of what we're actually getting. We have the ride vehicle right there, which is very similar to the Shanghai Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean version of that specific attraction, with the boat that can basically do anything, right?
Right.
Slide, drift, all this kind of stuff. It looks like they're going to be using that same ride system, or at least that's the configuration that's actually shown. And then, okay, we're going to go ahead and do bioluminescent forests, as you can see right there inside of this very large interior space. You have this very large forest perspective, I'm sure, exterior with all these waterfalls and so forth, showing a large show building. You can kind of see some artwork right there. Okay, so everybody's like, oh, all right, well, we're certainly getting the Avatar concept, right? It's not going to be subbed out with any other franchise, and this thing's going in. People have started laying things out, and everything is set to go. You can see the monorail, how it interacts with that. It looks like it's going to cut through the land, which is a very interesting choice, but c'est la vie, that's what we're getting. Yeah. All right, we're all going forward. And then the Experiences Showcase takes place, like I was saying yesterday, at 7 p.m. California time. And how many mentions did Avatar get? Just one fleeting mention from an Imagineer talking about Coco, saying, yeah, we're doing Avatar, but then there's this. And it's like, that's interesting. Maybe we'll learn more about it as the show goes along. It didn't get referenced once after that. There was no screen time dedicated to it. There was no segment dedicated to it. We learned nothing. In fact, after the show, Scott Gustin did some excellent reporting and apparently is saying, look, the prioritization for Disneyland Resort has changed. So previously it was the Avengers Campus, right? Coming first, and then Coco, and then Avatar. Now it's Avengers Campus, Coco, Tomorrowland, and Avatar. And I say Tomorrowland because at the conclusion of the show, very briefly, yesterday's Tomorrow Today was announced for Disneyland, and it will be getting a new Tomorrowland, which fans have been asking for 25 plus years, maybe even longer than that. I mean, Disneyland has needed a Tomorrowland desperately ever since the bulk of it was wrecked during the 1998 version of that land. Obviously, Rocket Rod's replacing People Mover, and now nothing sits on that track and hasn't for decades now. A lot of defunct spaces and so forth. It's needing an overhaul. Everybody can get on board for that. But because the, Build It Tomorrow land has been now pushed up, a lot of people believing, well, wait a minute, are we even going to get Avatar? Because now we're not working on a timescale, Jared, of 1 to 5 years to start construction. We're now working on maybe perhaps a 5 to 10 year timescale. Yeah. And again, even within 3 years of Avatar's existence, between the release of Way of Water and the release of Fire and Ash, that box office declined by 35%. A lot happens in 10 years, especially for the state of franchises, enthusiasm, and people actually resonating with franchises, etc. Will Avatar last that long? And here's the other thing, Jared. John Landau has unfortunately passed, right? Big champion of working with Imagineering and bringing these lands to life. Joe Rohde, no longer with the company, obviously one of the extraordinary Imagineers connected to the first version of Pandora. James Cameron is alluding to the fact that he might be walking away from this franchise altogether. And remember, the first guy who championed this idea of Avatar coming to Disneyland was Bob Iger. And well, they just celebrated the fact that he's going to be a legend and all these different things, but he is no longer the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. That was his vision, maybe not shared by anything else. Jared, I have come to this conclusion that I think with all these things being delivered and everything else. I just don't think this is happening anymore. And that's unfortunate for me to say, because I was one of the only ones at the start of this that said that this was going to happen at all. I just don't see it now.
Yeah, I guess, that could be looked at as a hot take, but I think it not really, because, Disney's done this before, where they do announce something and it doesn't happen, or it changes. And I think looking at this realistically with this IP, not only the timeline now, which is also, we could probably talk an hour and a half about that alone, about this was a Bob Iger pet project, potentially. He announced it probably way too soon. And because, if you're going to reveal something like this, you would assume it would have been at a D23 or something. So you've already had this out here for a while. Then all the questions around this franchise in particular. Maybe James Cameron, like you were saying, walking away from this. And Disney probably will continue to make these movies. But let's say that these movies don't, the box office continues to drop. And this ride doesn't open for years from now.
Right.
Where's Avatar then? And that doesn't mean they can't do it, but I kind of think this could be one of those things where this ride system, all this stuff, it's still the same thing, but it just has a different IP attached to it. I wouldn't be shocked by it, because, it wouldn't be the first time this has happened. And obviously with the Tomorrowland announcement, and a lot of these announcements, I will say, which I think is actually pretty smart on Disney's part, kind of some fan service. People have been asking for Tomorrowland. People have been asking for some of these things they did announce, even though they didn't have all the details with them. Seeing Coco and Tomorrowland, which I'm going to imagine that is going to be a very lengthy process to redo Tomorrowland, because I think you guys have a very similar thing as to Disney World, which is those interconnected buildings. It's not really a simple thing to go in here and redo Tomorrowland.
Correct.
So I agree. This becomes back burner. And not that, maybe they have the position of right now, we plan on doing this, but it doesn't mean in 5 years I could change. And I think that's realistic here, what you could be looking at.
Yeah, I think maybe perhaps the bulk of Disney is still committed to Avatar at this point. I'm not saying they're completely walked away from it. Obviously, you have Imagineers working on it.
Obviously,
I'm not saying that
they had a model there, but I think the lack of a presence at that showcase does kind of give you a little bit of an inkling there too.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So the power players, right? Where are they at with this? Again, a lot of the power players that championed a project like this or would have worked on it or whatever are now gone, no longer with us, walking away from even their own franchises. In the case of James Cameron, as he's alluded to right there. Where is the momentum for this is what I'm saying. And does that momentum shift over 5 to 10 years that we're waiting for this thing? I mean, it could very well do that, as Jared beautifully pointed out. And I'll remind people about this too, in that this project that you're seeing on screen right here predated every single Walt Disney World announcement and detail that you heard yesterday on the Experiences Showcase. Every single announcement, every single project, this predated all of them by at least a year, as it was announced in, I think, February of 2023. The bulk of the projects coming to Walt Disney World and Disney parks in general were made specifically for that 2024 D23 conference right there. So I guess what I'm saying is that the fact that this is the oldest project, this should be the most developed project, the most mature project, and it did not even get a segment in this Experiences Showcase, like Jared pointed out right there, might tell you the enthusiasm that Disney might have towards something like this. And really, it speaks to the likelihood that we are getting this at some point, especially as it gets deprioritized for Tomorrowland. A couple more things on this before moving on to Tomorrowland. So one is apparently they're going to kick off, working on the overpass, right? The pedestrian overpass, passing over Harbor Boulevard and so forth, connecting it to the parking garage very shortly. In fact, they're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony next week, from what I understand, to kick off the start of construction, vertical construction, that is, for the parking structure itself. So we know that parking structures usually take anywhere between 2 to 18 months. 2 years to 18 months to complete. So, we're waiting on all of those things, and that puts us roughly, 2028 or thereabouts, which might be why Avengers Campus is going to take as long as it is, because if you have significant expansions, significant investment, you have to have a place to put those people as they come to your park. It's not just about capacity on the inside, it's about capacity on the outside. So that might give us a a range for which these projects might be completed, and so forth. The only other thing is that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, when it was added, they also added a parking structure, so it makes sense that that 2028 timeline that we talked about before. So we're waiting on that. That's why I was really hoping that we would get maybe word on the construction of the parking structure. Why I was like, hey, Disneyland Forward was approved, I believe, in 2023, 4, something like that. I can't quite remember. But it's like, it's like, okay, well, Disneyland Forward has been approved. Start the parking structure immediately because we have to wait for that before we get anything substantial for Disneyland Resort. In fact, it's going to be next week. We'll see what happens there. Now, I want to go ahead and switch up just a little bit here towards Disneyland's Tomorrowland right there because I think it is significant. Let's see if I actually have some roll on that. Give me a second.
And that's the thing, too, about Pandora. I think, honestly, it would be a gorgeous land. Like, our Pandora it's so, like, the bioluminescent stuff, like, it really could be cool. I think people would like it, but I just don't. If that franchise is just going down and they don't have the interest in it, because you got to think, like we said many times, you build these attractions thinking they'll stick around for decades. That's the point of this. You don't want to have to go in here and do a supercharge where less than a decade later you're redoing the ride because nobody likes it. So does it? Are they willing? I guess you could look at Tron. I guess there is some evidence that it doesn't have to be the biggest IP, but that was also something they just took from China and they plopped it over because they thought it would fit. I really do think it could be a cool land with all the stuff they showed and what I've seen in Disney World, but I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of evidence there that pointing to a lot of, at the very least, major questions on, especially the direction and what's the priority here. And obviously Josh Tomorrow is not sharing the same priorities as Bob Iger did when it comes to this property, for sure.
Right? I mean, it's like, hey, new management, new priorities, new things that we're going to go ahead and emphasize. I do say, we can go ahead and put up that Tomorrowland roll right there. The prioritization, it looks like, from a management standpoint, especially with Thomas Muslim at the helm, might be, hey, you know what? We've heard these fan criticisms for years. Let's actually do something about them. And we know that Thomas Muslim's a little bit more guest-oriented in that way because we heard from the February symposium, right? The one with the media summit right there. He said that, hey, we look at those guest surveys, we look at what people are saying, we want to go ahead and address those issues. In the context when it came to DCA's 25th anniversary and all of that, it was more about cast members, right, and training and all of that. But remember, he was the president of Disneyland Resort. Now he's the chairman. And so he might be taking the tack, hey, let's go ahead and do something about that Disco Yeti. Let's go ahead and do something about Journey into Imagination. Let's go ahead and do something about Disneyland's Tomorrowland. So, Disneyland's Tomorrowland, the tagline being, yesterday's tomorrow today, I do believe, is going to be the direction. And a lot of people have speculated, hey, are they going to go back to the 1967 aesthetic for Tomorrowland, that classic aesthetic that, Walt himself championed and so forth? It looks like they are. What that entails, however, is, left to be desired. We didn't get any details and timelines, specifics, attractions, any of that. It was just a fleeting mention.
It was like a throwaway thing almost. And that was it. They dropped it a little, and then they showed you a little bit of a concept, like a tad bit of space. I think it was Space Mountain. And then it was like moved on. And you're like, what? So yeah,
exactly. It's like
speculation here.
Wait a minute, hang on. like that, you understand that Tomorrowland could take up 30 minutes of this whole thing, right? Like, what are you doing? Okay. It's just boom. We're just plopping it down there, and then going forward. And then there was like a piece of one piece of concept artwork, right? And it had like an old school version of the monorail actually moving through it, which was very, very interesting. I was hoping for maybe that was a people mover. No, it looks like a Mark 5 monorail, I do believe, is what that would be, which is interesting. I don't know if we're getting new monorails, but do
you think monorails can make a comeback if they're redoing this? I kind of feel like they would, maybe.
Well, here's the thing, right? So the Avatar concept shows the Mark 7 monorails that are currently with Disneyland right now. It is possible that we get even newer monorails, perhaps more akin to that, like Jetliner, Bob Gurr, what is it? Mark 5 aesthetic, or Mark 5 aesthetic. It'd be possible, that they actually go in that direction. We'll see, though. And I want to go ahead and talk about that a little bit, because from what we're hearing, and I think Wizard relayed this to me, Theme Park Wizard, which I should be doing a show with him tomorrow, by the way, and we'll have more updates and more rumors and speculation for you as well. So, hey, stay tuned for that. It's going to be a ton of D23 coverage throughout Theme Park and throughout Theme Park Wizard, throughout Orange County 5, throughout Capture the Magic. So, stay tuned to all of our channels for sure on that. But, okay, so I'm hearing, this is what was relayed to me, again, Permit Wizard, you're the best. From what I understand, D23 2024, right? Remember, Piston Peak is coming to Magic Kingdom. Oh yeah, everybody's excited. It's gonna be fantastic. Cars Land, finally, Magic Kingdom's gonna be awesome, gonna be cool, gonna be great, gonna be phenomenal. And then the Monday occurs. The Black Monday, some people call it.
Dark Monday.
Yeah, the Dark Monday. In which it's announced that Rivers of America is permanently going away to make way for Cars Land. After everybody went home from the show, after all the announcements were supposedly made, that was the shoe to drop. From what I understand, for Tomorrowland, there might be a moment like that throughout the week, the incoming week, right? After the show is concluded, after everybody goes away, now it's like, hey, in order to make way for yesterday's tomorrow today, we're now doing away with some things. And I think this piece of B-roll is appropriate because that might be what's at issue. So we'll note that Autopia has until February in order to update for electric vehicles if that were to occur. We did not get any announcements regarding that, right, at the show. It might be that Autopia itself goes away permanently. That might also include the submarine voyage. That might also mean some of the track work that's back there currently residing in that Spaghetti Bowl area as we described it. So the monorail, people mover, all of that. That all might be going away. And maybe even more, we're not sure, but that's the speculation here, is that some of those attractions get decommissioned fully in order to make way for more shows, attractions, entertainment, and so forth. That comes with a new Tomorrowland at Disneyland. People, be prepared, okay? Yeah. That might actually take place.
I honestly, it wouldn't surprise me, because you would think a pretty big overhaul of Autotopia would be something they would, like Disney likes to talk about how green they are all the time too. So they would use that as an opportunity to be like, hey, electric, even if they're forced to do it, we're bringing electric vehicles. We care about the environment. We're going to, make this ride more interesting for the youngins, things like that. But not hearing anything and having that deadline coming up pretty soon.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked. Now, would this include, again, I don't know Disneyland that well. Would this include the Nemo submarine area as well?
Right. The Nemo submarine voyage. Right. I think that has been circled. I mean, by management, that's been circled for decades. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Paul Presser wanted to just end that just like Walt Disney World managers did for the 20,000 League Under the Sea attraction at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. It's like, look, this thing leaks like a sieve, first of all, which in California, that's, not great. Also, too, it's very expensive to maintain. You have to have divers down there every single night to perform maintenance on the various show elements and so forth. Every once in a while, you have to repaint the lagoon that's out there, which is an expensive process. I think they use like a glass-embedded paint in order to actually accomplish that goal right there. That can't be cheap. It just requires a lot of maintenance. And for an attraction that does maybe 900 people an hour, if you're lucky,
right?
Is that necessary? Are we necessarily getting the ROI from a place like this? Probably not. Yeah. So let's go ahead and remove that. But as you know, Autopia sits right on top of that. And we did hear from a Disney spokesperson working at the Disney Resort saying that, Imagineers, they're going in there with a prototype little electric vehicle at night. We're going to go ahead and convert this over to electric. It sounds to me, though, things might have changed, and Autopia might be going away permanently. I'm just saying, folks, we haven't had that confirmed, but just be open to that possibility that maybe this electrification effort didn't go as planned. Maybe there's some, enormous costs associated with it, especially projected out. And it's like, hey, you know what? This just doesn't work. We can't give it gas because of California. This thing goes away as well.
I could see the cost being something too. Like if you start looking at that and like how many vehicles they would need, and electric vehicles aren't necessarily they're not the cheapest things in the world. That's definitely possible. And Storybook Sorcerers even says Maslum actually said there will be more open spaces to dream about in the future. How do you get more open spaces, especially in Disneyland?
Yeah, something usually has to go. And I've heard rumors for years that Imagineers have been wanting to get rid of the spaghetti bowl for the monorail, for example, in that back area for a long, long time. Mainly because, if it's transportation to and from Tomorrowland and Disneyland Hotel, then let's keep it transportation. Remember, that spaghetti bowl was only there because, well, Walt Disney himself wanted to showcase monorail technology, right? Partnered with Al Weg, Bob Gurr designed it, and let's go ahead and give you a ride. Then, later on, it was added as transportation going all the way to Disneyland Hotel as a courtesy to Jack Wagner, who invested in the Disneyland property. Wagner? Oh, sorry, Jack Rather. Do apologize. Always get those confused. Yes, Rather, who invested in Disneyland Hotel back in 1955. Okay, he's got, monorail access. But they kept the bulk of that track when monorail was a ride for all that time, right? And so it's still there, and you still crisscross, and you do all this kind of stuff. Well, you can obviously imagine that that's an inhibition to expansion. Right. So that might be the open spaces that Thomas Maslum is actually referring to. It's going to be very, very interesting because Thomas Maslum, he was the president of Disneyland at one point. He might know these issues and has closer access to the purse strings, approvals, and so forth.
That's a very good point. And one thing to note, too, Thomas Maslum comes from the Signature Collection, which, again, like he's been kind of showing, very customer-oriented when you're dealing with that level. And so, he had some interesting things, which, by the way, he wasn't that bad on stage. I think he was actually pretty decent. I actually wouldn't be against. He would be fine, I think, maybe even, I don't know if the full thing I think tomorrow, but he didn't seem really awkward necessarily too much on the show.
I think what did him in a little bit on this show, if I had any criticism, was he was trying to keep up with the comedic style and tone set up by Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah. I think it was a little bit more formal, a little bit more official, a little bit more professional. I think he could actually be okay. And I would implore that he do that because the Neil Patrick Harris stuff did not sit well with a lot of fans in the audience.
I talked to people that were there, and a lot of people said, it was a weird show. I don't know if I'd go as far as say as from a show perspective that it was bad, but you're talking about like, what is the purpose of this whole thing here? It's because people go there because they want to hear what is coming to the parks. And so much of it is just like Broadway musicals and music. And it's just, here, like literally when they said the Disneyland thing, it's like Disneyland and you're like, oh, and they're like, and a musical number. And you're like, wait, what? And then like you get nothing. So it was just very like, it's like what stand-up comedians talk about doing stand-up and corporate events, how it's just terrible just because the setting isn't the right setting. Right. I think similar to this, like this type of show isn't necessarily bad, but it's like in this setting, the audience isn't really into the music because that's not what they care about. They're not there to see Sheryl Crow sing 2 songs. They're here to hear about what they're going to bring to Magic Kingdom or something like that.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people had this impression that this show wasn't respectful of the people's time, which I agree. But you got to fill in 2 hours. What is it going to be? Right. Well, it's going to be a lot of this, and it's really unfortunate.
That's coming either. You got to fill time if you're not going to reveal a whole lot.
Maybe that's why they had people sitting on the couch talking about this stuff to an audience of 14,000. It just was bizarre that they would actually take this tact, but whatever. Neil Patrick Harris, this is what you get. This is what we're doing. So I think Thomas Maslum would have been better served in a more traditional format than the one actually chosen because he's trying to act and he's got that accent there and he's a little bit awkward and he can't necessarily pull that end of it off. But like you said, I think in a more professional setting, I think he'd really thrive. So we'll see what actually happens with all of that, whatever actually happens with Tomorrowland. But let's go ahead and, because we're on the subject of tomorrow, I think it might be appropriate, Jared, to go all the way to the East Coast right there and talk about the future of perhaps Spaceship Earth, Epcot, and Journey into Imagination. Let me see if I can go ahead and bring it up right now.
Before we get to that, while you find that B-roll, we got a couple super chats we'll hit on this. We got Storybook Sorceress here for 380 jewels. Says Fortune Cookie. Thank you, Storybook Sorceress. And I do know jewels now. 1 jewel is a penny. I know that much now. I figured that out.
Nice.
Rick has 2 jewels and says Sparkles. Thank you. 1 magical spark for $1.99 says Tomorrowland Avatar delay till new entry finished.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm just talking about the priority level, right? For projects and what's coming up next and what's being actively worked on. So, yes, likely you would want at least that parking structure to open before Tomorrowland, before a Coco, before an Avengers, right? So I think that's where we're currently at right there. So you're probably not going to start work, I would say, perhaps meaningfully on Avatar until at least that's a little bit more settled. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts there. But I remember distinctly a Disney Parks blog post in which they were talking about the overpass and the Eastern Gateway portion of Disneyland Forward. And they were saying that Monsters, Inc. and its closure was going to be pushed out a little bit. It was supposed to be already closed now. It's not yet. And people were saying, why did that happen? And they were saying, well, it doesn't delay anything when it comes to Avatar. We were just reshuffling the schedule, and we wanted to go ahead and keep it open longer. Avatar should be on track. Now, if in fact it's being deprioritized a little bit and Tomorrowland's shifting upward, what does that actually mean right there? Oh, by the way, I was correct, Jared, in my assertion that they would go entertainment heavy, at least for now. Yep. It looks like we're getting Remember Dreams Come True. Called that one right there, at least updated for new projections of Rivers of America, projections down Main Street, and I'm sure there's going to be some show changes as well. But Remember Dreams Come True, awesome stuff. Obviously, that being the 50th anniversary fireworks celebration. And World of Color, the original, is coming back. I called that one as well. That one's coming back right there, updated, I'm sure. And then Magic Happens will be the parade for now until they announce something else. So no Logical Parade and no Phantasmic 3.0 and the Dragon.
I know.
I'm not happy about that.
That was one a lot of people for Disneyland was thinking, and I know you talked about too. It's like, and I guess some of it is also with this will be the interesting part of maybe they just don't use D23 to announce all the, like if we start seeing some announcements about things coming after this. Now that becomes very interesting because it's like, oh, are we getting away from big splashes at these things and more? Because even before D23, they had some announcements about some stuff. Reefer, and you're like, that's interesting. So maybe I've argued many times. I think it's certain. If you look at Universal, they don't have a D23. They have a lot of fan speculation. They don't give you anything. I mean, even the coaster, they'll build when they were building Epic Universe, they had a wand. All right, big hand holding a wand over a portal, and they had still not officially said it was going to be a Harry Potter lane. They're like, what else is that going to be? And so it's like maybe, and I think with the concept art, maybe playing this stuff closer to the vest is something they might do going forward, which could be interesting.
And they might have to, because people, I think just as Danny over there on Five Fires or Mondo over there has said actually that, hey, look, listen, if you graft it out a little bit longer in the timeline here, and if you look at the Anaheim Convention Center, apparently a lot of it's booked out for the Olympics that will be taking place in Southern California in 2028. Okay, well, if that's the case, then, right, especially along the timeline of when D23 is usually held, which is about the August time period, right, every other year, is it conceivable, if in fact it is booked out 2 years in advance right here, during the time that D23 usually takes place, do they actually delay the show 1 year and set it up for a 2029 D23 Expo around the August time period? The reason why that's significant is because you'll remember that back in 2009 is when the first D23 actually took place at the Anaheim Convention Center. So they could have a 20th anniversary commemorative D23, which is big and splashy. But you're right, Jared, they would have to have a way to get information and updates out in other venues than just D23. And, because it's 3 years. So they might be working to do that as well.
Yeah, I can see that. Hey, give me 1 second. My wife's, she's telling me something real quick. Give me like a couple of seconds. Be right back.
Sure, no problem at all. It's just very, very interesting how this whole thing has been relayed, has been carried out right here. Really was hoping for Phantasmic to be significantly overhauled, especially for its 35th anniversary year at Disneyland. Obviously, opening in 1992 at Walt's original Magic Kingdom right there. So it's just very, very surprising that we didn't actually get an update on that. But we are getting World of Color, the original back, which I think is honestly, myself personally, the best version, and my favorite personal fireworks show is Remember. So those two things are good. A little bit surprised that we didn't actually get a nighttime parade package. Now, from what I understand, they can't hold too many parades in the area just beyond the berm right there because of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and everything else. So that's why they only go with one parade rather than two as they've traditionally done, and obviously to keep down some labor costs as well. Let's be honest there. Okay, so you're getting Magic Happens back, which I think is good. I think it's fantastic. I think it's something that you should do. But now we don't have a nighttime parade, which is a little bit disappointing. And we're not getting the return of the electrical parade, which I think the people might be happy about. I'm not sure. But I think it's just kind of very interesting, the things we're seeing over there at Disneyland Resort in terms of the entertainment that we all kind of expected would receive, but aren't. Just a little bit interesting. That could, those entertainment packages could come later, but at least for right now, it's going to be Magic Happens, World of Color, the original, and Remember Dreams Come True. Now, I think we're on to Epcot, perhaps, right? Oh wait, no, we have Click Flicks, I believe.
I was going to say my wife, she was making sure because it's been hot here today in the air. She was like, the thermostat, thought maybe the AC had gone out, and I looked at it, it hadn't. I was like, it's just really hot today. So I was like, okay. Crisis averted there.
Yeah,
it's always a worry in Florida about your AC.
I know. You can't literally live without it. I fully get it. Fully understand.
Yeah,
no worries.
Yeah.
I got you.
And we do have a 5 here from Cliff. Thank you, Cliff Flicks. And he says, how many D23 announcements that got fans excited but wound up completely dying years later? Over a dozen or more D23 project deaths are common. And we will get to that because, again, I think they opened themselves up to this criticism given the lack of details of a lot of this stuff. And it's just like, okay. And we heard about the Epcot overhaul. Looked great when they had all that concept art and what ends up getting. And I think anytime now, and especially Epcot, you announce anything for Epcot and people are like, no, I'm from Missouri, but it's like, show me the show me state. I want to see it before I really get really excited. And then we also have 200 joules here from Stu My Rick. Says Sunshine. Thank you, Stu My Rick. But yes, let's move over and talk about, like Vash said, Epcot. And yes. They kind of dropped this kind of randomly during the show as well, and just in a very short segment like they did Tomorrowland for Disneyland.
Yes, they did, which I thought was really, really interesting. It's like, okay, I guess we're getting a new Spaceship Earth. Now, this is kind of what I love about the interaction between the panel, like the audience there that was in the theater and reaction I think they were expecting. Yeah. The Imagineer showcasing this next to Mike Rober. Whatever. It was like, hey, y'all heard of Spaceship Earth, right? And it's like, yay, and it wasn't like a super huge response because it's not like people have heard of Spaceship Earth, and it's not like people aren't enthusiastic or excited about it. They're just like tepid that Disney would touch it. So that's why it's like, exactly. Oh no, why'd you bring it up? And now it's like, yeah, it hasn't been updated for 20 years, so now we're gonna go ahead and do it. And right now the theme of Spaceship Earth is about communication, right? Well, we're gonna go ahead and broaden that out. It's more gonna be about human connection, and we're gonna bring it up to the modern era and even beyond, and so forth. And all of that kind of stuff is just like, what is going to happen with, I think, the thesis attraction for Epcot? Jared, it just happens. It's now constant now. Walt Disney World has to lose a classic. They just have to update a classic. They just can't help themselves. Spaceship Earth now back on the list after it was revealed. Spaceship Earth was originally going to be redone in 2019. Obviously, that fell off. Now it's back on. What do you think about this?
Well, I'll toot my own horn. I kind of said this. I felt before, which interesting enough, the biggest rumor out there we didn't get, which was Space Mountain for Disney World. But the coming weeks before, I was like, I think Spaceship Earth might be in there. And then whenever they had the show that they're developing for Disney Plus based on Spaceship Earth, I was like, I kind of think that might point to something with Spaceship Earth here, because if you're going to do a show, and mind you, that show has nothing to do with the ride. I mean, you hear the synopsis of that show. It's like time traveling teenagers stopping a cataclysm. You're like, maybe it's good, but I don't know what that has to do with Spaceship Earth necessarily. And you hear that. But again, No timelines. We don't know if this is what they originally said about the 2019 overhaul of this, which they didn't give a ton of details about that one either. They had some concept art about some of these updated scenes and such. They did give the line that this is going to be like basically what they say, classically Epcot. It was, I can't remember the exact line they said, but they made a point to kind of say that.
Yeah, I heard classic as well. So a lot of people are like, okay, are they going to touch, some of the best parts of this attraction, which is, and we heard it over and over again last night. Thank the Phoenicians. Oh, God, that was
well, even the band, what was the band? The Phoenicians was the house.
Yeah, the Phoenicians, which is just like, dude, really?
When I heard that, I was like, we're probably getting some of Spaceship Earth. Because as much as and they made it a little bit of a crack early in the segment about the broken Yeti as well. And so they kind of did plant a little bit of stuff in the beginning that they did show a little bit toward later. So not a little bit of on the nose. Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. So I hope they keep a lot of the classic stuff, but obviously, it when it gets into the modern era, right, past the printing press, with what is it, Steve Wozniak or Steve Jobs?
I think it's Steve Jobs.
Yeah. I think it's Steve Jobs, right? In that sequence right there with the car and everything else, and past that point, what happens, especially with the 60s. We were actually talking about this year. Some of the scenes in Spaceship Earth were a little bit redundant with the additions coming to Carousel of Progress, and if in fact they start there, right, with the moon landing and everything else, it kind of makes sense. I'm sure they got some feedback like, hey, you've got a lot of this stuff in Spaceship Earth. Why are you bringing it to Carousel of Progress? And maybe they heard that and they said, you know what? You're right. So perhaps they're adjusting some of this stuff. I will say I was hearing from Pro. He was suggesting that, hey, look, updates to this attraction are really, really hard to do. They're really, really expensive to do because of access, right, between big set pieces and so forth, and getting things installed there and getting things out, and that structure, as impressive as it is, makes it a bear to update, which is why we don't typically see substantial updates for Spaceship Earth. Why it may have taken 20 years to actually do so, but it looks like they're committed to it. It looks like they're going to bring human connectivity to the fore. Looks like they're going to update some scenes to make it more modern, because they said this too, like a lot of things have happened since the last time, right?
Yeah, I caught that too, and I'm like, my whole thing on I did not like that whole Spaceship Earth is about communication, and now we're going to connection. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Are we going to have a scene here where we're showing people tweeting or something? You know what I mean? Like text messaging I'm like, oh gosh. Like the thing is about classic attractions, when I say Spaceship Earth, is you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Like you can just go in here and update some of these things. I think the one thing you could do is the finale scene. If you did nothing else but really make that better, and give the squeaky wheel here and oil squeal here and there and things like that. But I don't think you need to redo this entire attraction by any means. Now, I will also say the ride system in here is actually kind of complicated when you actually learn about it a little bit. So it's not the easiest thing necessarily. I don't know how far extensive this is going to be. I don't believe they're going to redo that by any means.
They can't.
I would assume not. But to your point, how do you get stuff in here? You know what I mean? Like, what is the way to do that?
Okay, so there's two ways. One is actually following the right track for smaller props, maybe, but two, like larger ones, there is like one maintenance elevator that you can actually send stuff up, and I do believe they had to cut the car in half in order to get that in there. So it's like it's not a lot of room that you're working with here. It's going to be a challenge, and well, it's like I was saying before, maybe it's one of the reasons why they haven't updated it before. You'll note as well, Jared, that the previous incarnation of this update, well, there has been many. I've heard of a roller coaster concept, which is crazy, but they're not going to go that far. The previous one was about telling stories or storytelling. That was the one that they were going to do, right? Going from communication, it was going to be, how we impart stories to one another. This here, human connection, obviously this concept has changed since the last time it was brought up back in 2019. So new direction, new thing. I will see what they end up doing here. Obviously, there's been a campaign almost to get rid of like classic audio animatronic figures because they're expensive to maintain, and they like the electronic audio animatronic figures that they have. Are they going to go that far? Hopefully not, but there's just not a lot of detail provided for this whole thing.
Almost no details. And that's the thing. It's like no timeline on this. Like, is this something that, this stuff gives me a little bit of reminiscent of the Blue Sky D23, a couple of those that they had, where this one maybe wasn't Blue Sky, but you're still getting these things and being like, coming soon. And you're like, I don't know what soon, like, what do you think soon means, Thomas Maslin? I would like to know. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm on my way, I'll be there soon, and it's like 9 hours later, and you're like, what is soon to you? I suppose if you think soon is within 4 years, I'm like, okay, maybe that makes some sense. But and we've talked about this before, like Epcot just had its overhaul, and we saw maybe they're finally getting to fixing the new in-ground lighting that hasn't worked since it opened. And now we're circling back to Spaceship Earth off of maybe some of the permits they had originally, which I'm not against. Like, I guess you could say on the plus side, it's like, even when things are delayed or they don't happen, they're not necessarily always dead. We've seen Imagineering do this before, where you bring stuff back that had been, delayed, or they didn't do it at that time. I'm just a little, I'll put it this way. In the current state of Imagineering, I would like to have a little bit more confidence in them before they go into some of these classic attractions. And we're going head first into these things. And I'm just, you got Carousel Progress and now Spaceship Earth and maybe Tomorrowland. You're like, yeah, I'd like to just prove to me a little bit more on what you're able to do here before we start going in. And I don't want to be in a situation where you're like, Spaceship Earth used to be good, sort of thing. That's what I don't want to happen. I love this attraction, and I will admit it needs some help, but you don't have to you don't have to replace everything. And I really hope like they don't lose the journy of humanity. Like, it's a cool thing, and especially for kids. Like, my kids have gone through it. And we've had conversations after the fact of like, like the Library of Alexandria is a really interesting topic to talk about with your child, about how we, gathered information, how this used to work. A lot of the stuff we know now is even from back then. And I just hope you don't lose that. But we've also seen what Epcot was to what it is now. It is not the same park. And I wouldn't be surprised if Spaceship Earth is not the same ride in this new version that whenever they end up doing it.
I agree. And that's why a lot of people are nervous. I mean, Jared, even at the height of Imagineering, with the second generation Imagineers there, they still screw up Journey into Imagination, which I guess we should probably discuss right here. I would have visuals of this. I don't, so we're just going to keep up Spaceship Earth stuff, because I mean, they didn't provide anything either. I mean, unless you want to see Neil Patrick Harris as a Dreamfinder. That's all we got.
Doing more work than Disney did, showing you all this stuff right now.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So the Dreamfinder is coming back to Journey to Imagination, it looks like, or at least that's what was teased. We'll see if they actually do that. I do like One Magical Spark, though, pointing out the idea that, both these things be ready for Epcot's 50th anniversary. That would be kind of cool, which would be 2032, I do believe, is when that would be.
And that probably is a realistic timeline, if I would guess.
Yeah. Because I don't think Journey into Imagination is going to be on the front burner by any means. I do think it's going to be a little while.
Literally the very last thing of the show. Like, Thomas Maslin was on the stage and said, "We'll see you guys later. Good night." And then it was like the music played and Neil Patrick Harris comes out and says something about Figment. And then they ended the show. There was nothing in terms of like even a visual. It was just Neil Patrick Harris in the Dreamfinder costume holding a baby Figment. And that was it. That
was it. So I look, at some point, right? Yeah, do something about Journey into Imagination. I mean, if you're going to touch Spaceship Earth for the 12th time, I guess, like, you got to do Journey into Imagination. I think Tom Corliss from Walt Disney Movies Today makes a great point that there have been generations now that have grown up with this version of Journey into Imagination. And so in order to maintain the relevancy of merchandise sellers like the Dreamfinder, like Figment, you kind of have to give it some love at some point. So it kind of makes sense that, you just got to go in there, maybe fix some problems. Now, I'll say this, if people are thinking, we're going to get the complete restoration of how it was before, I just don't think that's in the cards. It was so complex, so complicated. A lot of that stuff doesn't exist anymore and has been, paneled over, removed, replaced, all of that. I just don't believe that they're going to go and do, the overhaul that fans want to restore this to its, classic 80s iteration. I just don't see that. But do I see them reworking a bunch of scenes and taking out, what the Imagination Institute stuff and all of that? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I can't say even my kids never liked the Figment ride very much. So it was lost on my kids, the generation. Now, I think what you could point to a lot of this, which there was a comment here that kind of pointed this. I was going to bring this up too. Was Default 3-in-1 said, if you notice, each new announcement, or a lot of them, were not IP based. These are samples of Josh's priorities and vision versus Iger's market IP focus. It's a stark contrast to what is under construction. That's a very good point, because a lot of this stuff you can really point to. I mean, people have been talking about Spaceship Earth, people talking about Figment, Tomorrowland. To me, I felt like this was I guess you could call it and I don't think fan service is a bad thing. I think sometimes this is thrown around as like a bad thing, where it's like, Deadpool Wolverine was fan service. Like, what? Giving people what they want? Like, that's not bad. Right. And so you look at this of losing the rivers, losing Muppet Vision 3D, all the things that you've had that list before, of all the things we've lost at Disney World in particular the last 10 years, giving the fans a little in here is not a bad move. So a lot of this is interesting. We've talked about before, what is tomorrow's priorities going to be, or Masloom, and then we have new leadership at both Disney World and Disneyland. Maybe this is a shift a little bit to giving the fans what they have been asking for more, which I'm not against. In theory, a Spaceship Earth overhaul, I think it's great. In theory, Figment, but it's like, there are questions about the Imagineers. But okay, let's say that is their vision here. I just think if you're giving people fan service what they want, you got to understand, you got to give them something. And maybe they'll follow up on Monday, maybe. But it's just like you have their attention on stage. People are asking for Figment for God knows how long to redo it. I'm not a Figment person, but I know it's popular amongst the fan base. And you just literally at the end of the show, you're like, well, here's the thing. And then we end the show. I'm like, that's almost cruel in many ways to not give people something. Like, well, okay, which direction is this going to be? And like, at least with Tomorrowland, with Disneyland, I love the idea of the 1960s version. I think that's cool. I've been saying for years, take it into the past and do a retro thing. I think it's a really cool idea with that. Right. I just, when it comes to Figment, I'm like, I don't know enough about Figment to know what people really want, what people are excited for. I just know the current iteration of this is not in great shape. It doesn't have a lot of demand. A lot of people that like it are not kids necessarily. And the best part of that attraction has been the exit area with all the stuff kids can play with in the meet and greets they have. That's the thing that most kids, when my kids are real little, that's where they spend most of their time. Because you used to have like Wreck-It Ralph in there, and you had Joy and stuff like that, and you had the little games you could play. So, I hope with this, it is kind of back into what Epcot was, like what do you call it? The edutainment type of theme that Epcot kind of was. I don't know if we're going to get that with this, though, or even Spaceship Earth.
I don't know either. I don't see them doing the edutainment thing, and some of those show scenes were so complex, and I mean, especially that carousel, that turntable that was there. Like, I still marvel at that thing and how it works and how like next gen it was. To accomplish that back in the 1980s was just insane. You have 5 different versions of the Dreamfinder, and it's all rotating around, and it's just phenomenal. But are they going to do that? I just don't think they are. I just don't think this Imagineering crew nor this Disney management is that dedicated. I think it's just like, okay, make it work. like just get it good enough and let's move on. I think is kind of the tack that they have. Yeah. We'll see, though. We'll see. It could be like awesome, could be great, could be fantastic, could be stellar, could be phenomenal. I just don't think we're gonna get that, though.
I hope it is. And I'm with you. Like, I'd be very curious about the budget allotted to both of these projects. Like how big of a priority is it? Honestly, with Spaceship Earth, I would kind of be comforted knowing it's a smaller budget, if I'm being honest, because then like, okay, we're not going to go in here and like overhaul and change this ride from head to toe.
Right.
But maybe it's just, like projections up top and things. And when it comes to Figment, I'm one of those people, I can look at something that I'm not necessarily interested in, but look at it and be like, hey, I hope it's great for you. If Figment's terrible, in my opinion, Figment's always been terrible to me. So I don't, it does no water off my back. But for the fan base, it would be nice for the people that really do love Figment to have a ride that is worthy of what he's the festival icon at this point. Maybe they change that going forward and maybe a more prominent thing, but that's what you hope with this of fan services. You do give the fans what they want, which is a updated, better attraction. But is it going to be compared to like the older stuff, which I think is a lot of times Imagineering run into, which is they were doing awesome stuff in the 80s. And, are they going to be able to do that? I don't know. We'll see. I hope they can. I hope they can. But
I hope so. I hope so. I just don't know. But I think people, at the very least, would be placated by even a single audio-animatronic of the Dream Finder coming back in there. We'll see if that actually happens, though. Very excited about that.
Do you think they would, now given him in the show, do you think they do like an MPH version of the Dream Finder?
Oh, yep. I can see them doing that because apparently it's his favorite character and all of that. I don't know, he did say that, hey, if I did this show, you promised to bring back the Dreamfinder and all of that. Obviously, we know he's a fan. We know the Easter eggs and all of that. So it wouldn't surprise me. And Neil Patrick Harris has been involved in attractions before. For example, he was the voice for Incredicoaster for a while. Sit, head back, seat forward, and hang on, that kind of thing, and count down for all of that. That was for California Screaming, back in the day for DCA. He was also the voice of Mara, from what I understand, for a little period of time for Indiana Jones Adventure back at Disneyland, which is interesting. Voice change. I did not know that either. And then somebody was like, hey, for like a brief moment in time, he was the voice of Mara. And I was like, oh, that's why it sounded weird for a little bit right there.
Right.
Because I thought it was it James Earl Jones that did the original voice? I don't know. More fitting, I would say. But yeah. So we'll see on all of this stuff. Literally, they did not give any context or anything else connected to any of this right here. So we have a few different paths we can go, Jared. We can go to Animal Kingdom. We can go to Disney Studios. Where do you want to go?
Let's go Animal Kingdom because this is one where a lot of this was what we assumed, and they didn't give us a ton of stuff we didn't already know about what is coming to Tropical Americas. And I think some of the other stuff, like Villains and Monstropolis, could be interesting here. But one of the major announcements that they did have is they're going to redo or make the Yeti work again, which I did find funny that you spend time on your big announcement stage to basically be like, we're going to fix something we should have done 20 years ago. Because I told Vash earlier, I'm like, this is like me as a dad, be like, kids, everyone, come together. And they're like, what? I'm like, the toilet that's been broke for 10 years? They're like, yeah, like, I fixed it. And they're like, thanks, Dad. Like, yes. And like, God, please hold your applause for me. Like, this is great, but it's like, it's just funny that this is on a stage at D23. But this has obviously been something people have been wanting for a very long time. And my understanding, Joe Rohde had said many times, to fix this, they got to go to that mountainside to do this. I think this is a pretty big undertaking.
It is a huge undertaking, right? And so this is what's never been done before, because it's like it is in and about. It's embedded within this mountain. And I will say, this single attraction changed the way Disney develops rides forever. Okay, It was like, we've got to have a B mode, and we've got to have these things accessible in the future if things go wrong like this, because it was a big learning lesson for everybody involved. Like, sometimes you go a little bit too far, a little bit too ambitious, and what sucks about this specific figure is that not only is he big and impressive, but he's the central like figure in the entire attraction. Like, it's all leading up to this moment right here.
Presence on this mountain and everything.
Right. And then you get nothing. So, okay, I have heard a couple of things here. One is, Bob Gurr was like, hey, just make it basically a big puppet. You don't have to have it be like this whole complicated rig where he's like coming at you or whatever. Right. You could have points at which, you have very simplistic, right? Motion actuation, like a puppet or like a marionette, let's say, and you can have them move out that way. That, I think, would placate a lot of fans just by itself, because you're going through this so fast anyway.
Maybe, you're not going to be able to see.
In fact,
you don't need like the Avatar. What is it? The Navi River. Well, that animatronic is great when it works, looks like a real
Right.
person. It's like that's not really needed for the Yeti on this ride.
Yes. Pro was out actually saying, hey, one of the issues connected to this was not just the amount of force used, but the weight of the figure himself.
Yes, I've heard the same thing. Yeah.
Right. So if it's like, okay, well, maybe you can actually get this rig to work. If in fact he's much lighter, you wouldn't have to exert that much power and so forth, and you can actually get this figure working that way. There are a couple ways they can do, or a couple ways they can go, and some implementations they can actually do to make this figure work. Right. Like there's a possibility here. I will say this concept art depicting the Yeti, it's a little bit different than anything we've ever seen before. You got some maybe fog effects right there. You've got a whole repainting of this whole thing, maybe relighting, and the figure himself looks a little bit different than the Yeti that we've seen for all this time. So do they actually go out and replace this scene altogether, everything included? Suppose it's possible. He is in the same configuration, so it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do here.
Do it if you're going all out to do this. I guess the thinking could be go all out and just really do it up. But I guess it depends on what. But again, they didn't give us any details. No timeline. No nothing.
No timeline.
So, and which one's going to assume realistically here? They're not going to do, if they're going to, which I would imagine, going to shut down Expedition Everest to do this, unless they plan on working at night. I don't know. I don't know what they can do, what they can't. But one would assume they're going to do this after Tropical Americas opens at that point, would be the guess.
I would think so, right? Because we've heard the timeline for Tropical Americas being roughly 2027, right? For all three attractions. I have no idea how they're going to hit that with some of this stuff. I'm not sure. Yeah. They announced a timeline, by the way, that was different from what we're hearing for either Encanto or Indiana Jones. I can't quite remember right now, just looking at it. They're still sticking with 2027, right?
They didn't. If I recall correctly, I don't think they said. I'm still holding... Because what they did say was Monstropolis is going to open in
opening next year. Yes.
I think the same thing is going to happen for Tropical Americas, though.
Right. So Tropical Americas, the way I've always heard it is that it opens in stages. They might be saying for Monstropolis to open in stages as well, because I don't think the coaster's going to be done by next year. I think the coaster's going to take a little time. An interesting choice, because you only have one chance to make a first impression with your attraction, shows, buildings, all of that. And we remember Star Wars Galaxy's Edge when it opened without Rise. A lot of people didn't have that nice of an opinion about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge when it initially opened without Rise. Then when Rise opened, hey, things started to turn around a little bit, but that first impression was already baked in. It's an interesting choice. We'll see what happens. Nothing on this,
though. I think definitely shows that they want this stuff open as soon as they can. And one thing I will point out before this event, Josh D'Amaro was quoted as saying, the latest earnings call, they had like a button, their attendance was up a little bit, the numbers were up. He said himself he was surprised about the attendance numbers. So maybe even Josh D'Amaro himself was not even thinking it was going to be a jump in attendance. But I think overall, they clearly do want some of this stuff opening as soon as they can, given the struggles we have seen over the summers and start getting this stuff online that they're building, which, like you said, that's a very interesting choice. To have multiple lands more than likely opening in phases and what that could do attendance-wise, or do people hold off and just wait till it's all open? I suppose that is the next phase of that whole equation, but we won't know until that happens.
Right. And somebody was asking, I think it was Remy D, did they show this artwork at the show? They did. That was the only thing they showed. That's why it's static image right now. But let's go ahead and get some of those more interesting images on screen right now. Let's see if I can go ahead and stop that. And then I go ahead and share this again. And then it's this one right here. Yes. So we'll start with Indiana Jones because, basically that's an overlay, essentially, right? Now it's a very elaborate overlay, but it is an overlay. Apparently, the name was actually delivered for this attraction. It's going to be Indiana Jones and the Jade Serpent, I do believe, is going to be the attraction name for this. And it's all going to involve the serpent in Mayan, I do believe, history. I think it's Sukai, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be the serpent featured right there. And that was one of the main things illustrated at the show right there yesterday that took place during the Experiences showcase. They said that, Sukai, and they have this kind of serpent type figure, this mythical creature right here, which ties into the connection to myth and so forth for Animal Kingdom. Beastly Kingdom, obviously dragons, all of that. So they're going to have this mythical creature, and it's going to be attacking Indy at every single turn, as one could possibly surmise. I mean, we have a big snake in Indiana Jones and Temple of the Forbidden Eye right now, so they're going to do that. But apparently, the idea for this is that Indy set, I do believe, in the 1950s.
Yep.
So that would place him, I think, in a timeline between Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Is that right?
I believe that's where it would put it. Yeah,
I think
the movie
so.
in which in my opinion, there were 2 fan films that were made after Indiana Jones that I've heard are not received that well. But
yeah, exactly. so the trilogy of Indiana Jones, as we know it today. So they're going to be setting that. And by the way, I will say Harrison Ford did actually, have a video in which he said, "Hey, I'm the model for this," which is significant, guys, because Harrison Ford had never previously signed off on any attractions involving Indiana Jones before, which is why we get that weird look-alike of Harrison Ford in Temple of the Forbidden Eye and that weird voiceover of Indy, but not actually Harrison Ford, because he was not on board with any of that. He's actually privately kind of sworn off on any of those things. Hopefully that means, hey, if we have your likeness, can we put in other iterations of the ride? We'll see.
By the way, I love when they get Harrison Ford to do stuff, because clearly he's been a grumpy old man since his 30s, and I love it.
Yes.
I love it. They're just like, Harrison, can you make us a video? He's like, how much money are you gonna pay me? And they're like, here's some money. It was 7 seconds. I'm in the ride. It's me, and that was it.
That was it. I'm in the ride. Hey, what do you know?
How much money do you need for it? And I'm like, oh, here, Harrison, just take this and go.
Exactly. The myth of the Jade Serpent. Do apologize, got that wrong right there. Okay, fair enough. Here you go. And there's a little Harrison Ford there, and they did show the model, the 3D model of Harrison Ford as the audio animatronic. Looks good there. We'll see how that translates for an actual figure. Anywho's, like you said, grumpy old man. It hasn't changed. I love Harrison. I do, but man, it's my favorite
Harrison Ford moment was him. I think it was at the Captain America where he played Red Hulk, and he clearly, he looked like he had been enjoying himself a little bit before it. And they were like, "What's your favorite part of the MCU?" And he's like, "I have no idea," and just walks away. He's like, "I don't know. I'm just here. Whatever. I'm just in the movie." You're like, I respect.
Yeah, if you're expecting some kind of Tom Holland response,
from
Harrison Ford, that is never going to be the case. He is just cashing paychecks at this point.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't care. And you're like, okay, all right.
It's a job. I played a role. What do you want from me?
Into the ground again. You're like, okay, Harrison. All right.
All right, buddy. Come on. Let's get out of here. Sorry. The myth of the Jade Serpent. Do apologize. Okay, got the name wrong right there. Update it for you guys. Okay, so some interesting stuff surrounding this whole attraction. Apparently, they did have a panel before the showcase last night, in that they had Joe Rohde there, and he was talking about the design philosophy for Animal Kingdom. It was kind of interesting because he was like, "Hey, look, listen, this is not just about replicating, historic places. This is about being able to, in fact, know enough about the cultures that you're working on that you could actually assemble a structure from scratch based on the information that you actually have at your disposal concerning the culture, how they actually did it for the timeline that you're actually setting in, etc. right there. And that's why we have this I will say, beautiful exterior going off of Mayan, classic Mayan architecture right there. It does look pretty good, but again, it's if people are expecting the Tokyo version of an Aztec temple exterior, no. We're gonna do the simple structure in front of the Dino Institute, and then theme on the inside. At what extent of theming they're actually going to provide here, I'm not sure, but you can see a little bit there on screen, obviously currently. The other thing too about this, which was very interesting, Jared, they said that there was going to be a finale involving the serpent that was going to be totally mind-blowing, but that confirms to me no rolling boulder for this specific version of the Indiana Jones Adventure.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably that part was interesting, and from what they've shown, the rock work and stuff like that, it looks good from what they're doing here. And this is one of those things where I do agree that this is going to open in sections because this is going to be open and ready way earlier than the other stuff is because, again, it's a complicated one, a very in-depth one, but it is a reskin of an attraction, which a lot of people may not know. Dinosaur, this ride, what it formerly was, same ride track as Indiana Jones ride out in Disneyland. So they already know this ride system very well. So I think they have a lot of things they have a lot of internal knowledge about how to do this. So this will come very quickly. So yet again, this is probably now. I don't think they said officially, but I think you can look at this and say this is going to open in sections as well.
Yes, and I would imagine this opens before Encanto. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, 100%. I don't see how it wouldn't. Which is a very interesting approach here, because are you going to have, instead of having these 3 new lands open, are you going to have? How do you you know what I mean? How do you market this? You know, that's going to be really interesting to see. Like, do you market it in 3, whatever it is, 2 or 3 different opening timelines here? Because I think a lot of people, if they come here expecting Encanto and it's not open yet, you know, because you got to think a lot of people still come to Disney World looking for Harry Potter, and I've seen him in the park before. So that part I find kind of interesting, just from a normie guest level attraction or just information, because of what people hear, what they actually, you know, a lot of people, shockingly enough, don't do a whole bunch of research before they show up to a theme park necessarily.
That's true.
So that could be a little bit of a headache for them. But I think out of all the stuff they're doing, I think Indiana Jones in this one is a pretty safe bet. I mean, the ride out in Disneyland is often, and I haven't ridden it, and I know I'm told all the time it's a fantastic attraction. I'm going to experience it next year, but this to me is one of those where it's like, if you're anywhere close to Disneyland's version, this is an easy win, especially for this park.
Easy win. And this, you know, obviously this isn't the only iteration of the Indiana Jones Adventure. We also have Tokyo's as well, which takes a completely new take on the classic Indiana Jones experience. As opened in 1995, you'll note that Tokyo's opened 6 years later, and that was themed to the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, not the movie, but the kind of lore around the Aztecs and the Crystal Skull, and it's super impressive. Like, goodness gracious, it's ridiculous. But it obviously features the greatest hits from what was actually brought forward with Temple of the Forbidden Eye. I'll say this, like you said, it's an easy win if in fact they you know, build on what was already done before with Tony Baxter and the original Indiana Jones Adventure. I believe Linda, there was another Imagineer attached to that as well. I can't remember quite the name right now, but look, it's this is something that should be pretty straightforward right here. Don't screw it up. Imagineering, like, a lot of the groundwork has already been laid, both in terms of concept and in terms of the actual system that they're working with and the show building that they're working with itself. So hoping for some big things right here, hoping for some awesome stuff. It looks like some of the detail work and all of that is top notch, phenomenal. Are they going to be able to shroud that entire dinosaur show building? We'll see when it comes to this whole thing, but I think Myth of the Jade Serpent should be an easy win. Different finale, no boulder. It's going to be interesting how that is received.
Maybe they're a little gun shy on boulders after the whole Disney or Disney stunt show thing.
That's a fair point. But the boulder scene, I remember, you know, your dispatch for this is it's like anywhere between 15 to 20 seconds, and that what is it, boulder scene is actually 18 seconds long. And one of the problems that they've had historically with that is that it doesn't reset in the interval required for the next, Jeep. So a lot of people saying, hey, the boulder didn't work that time, didn't function. No, it maybe did, just not for you. And so obviously you want a more consistent experience. So that might be the case. We'll see, though. It's this is what they're doing. And I think that brings us to the other parts of Tropical Americas, right?
Before we move on, Cliff looks at it too here. It says, will they add Phoebe Waller-Bridge? Yes. Gosh, I hope not.
No. No,
just
not at all.
Up out of nowhere. You're like, no, get on in.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing too is he's going in there to search for a magical artifact. And apparently that has powers attached to it, and that's where it kicks off our adventure. Do apologize, they did include that as well. Which
I will say, all the things they have going on, I'm probably the most excited for this one because I think this one, like we were saying, this is the easiest one to do. Like it's a known commodity, and surely enough. And before we move on as well, we also had a $4.99, I believe, sterling pounds from Lucas Witt. Says, I think they cover up the area where the Yeti is for a while, then take apart the old Yeti and put a new one in its place, put the old Yeti elsewhere. I mean, it's definitely possible. I would love to know, just from a nerd aspect, what the game plan is. I would be very curious to know, like, what they plan on doing, and are they going to have to shut the ride down? I think that's a big question, because if you just open up Encanto area and now you have helped relieve the issues of this park, and then you pull away a pretty big attraction in that park,
well,
that could be interesting.
But that's why they haven't done it before.
Right,
one of the big reasons is because it needs substantial work, and this park couldn't afford any attractions to go down. So if you're going to establish new capacity within Encanto, potentially, and replacement to the capacity in some ways that you lost with Dinoland USA, maybe that opens you up to the ability to actually do something regarding Expedition Everest, and maybe they want some counter programming as well for some of the other big attractions all around Walt Disney World. Hey, come out to Animal Kingdom. We've got the working Yeti right there. Could be. We'll see.
Be a tagline. The Yeti works.
The Yeti works. He's alive, or something. I don't know. But Jared, you talked about how they might actually market this land right here. I do think the bulk of the marketing efforts are going to be attached to Encanto. Right, so that's, I think, going to usher in the completion of this land and where they're going to throw a lot of their marketing budget to. Again, previously they were working on that kind of 2027 timeline. It's just going to be a miracle to do this, because they showed some interior of the show building. There's nothing in there. So we'll see.
Like, what it just look like? You ever seen those barn dominiums being built where they build the outside first? There's nothing inside of it yet. I was just like, I don't know how this is remotely going to be in 2026. You got to think, by the time a ride's built, you got to go through all the testing too. And we've seen with the Hollywood version of the Hollywood Drift Coaster, it's not a given that everything's going to go well on testing either. Like, that's always something sometimes you got issues that arise during testing or the testing times as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. So you have to obviously go through a rigorous testing, cycle in order to get that going and to actually open it up and so forth. There's been a lot of talk about this Encanto ride for various reasons right here. Okay, so I'll start off by saying that they're going to have also a carousel involved, right? It's going to be, I think, 22 unique hand-carved animal figures inspired by beloved Disney and Pixar characters right there, which is good. They actually showed all those characters. A lot of people making comments on some of them, like Timon, for example, and saying, that makes me feel uncomfortable. But we also did get a name for this. It's basically Carousel of the Animals, but in Spanish. I'm not going to try to say that. It's just Carousel of the Animals. That's what we're getting. But let's go to Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto. Okay, it will feature 50 animals, maybe all of those on animatronic. We'll see, but they're saying 50. It will have no height requirement, and that potentially means no incline. So we did have that patent recently, right, which kind of showed the vehicles actually going up, maybe the various portions of the casita, right, up the stairs, right? And it's like, hey, how do you have no height requirement for this if you have an incline? Well, maybe they're actually simulating an incline,
right,
and that's actually why they were able to eliminate a height requirement for this particular attraction. I think that's a very, very good thing, because obviously, you need more family-based attractions for Animal Kingdom. But Jared, a lot of people talking about maybe what ride system might be featured here. What do you know?
I think a lot of people assumed trackless. I mean, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, Remy's. They've done multiple of these, and there's a lot of times issue with downtime with that type of ride system, but it is cool. I get the impression from looking at this, they haven't said, but and even other people looking at this as well, I do not think this is a trackless ride system. And I think somebody had alluded to this might be the same type of ride system they used for Spider-Man in Islands of Adventure. Now, I don't know if that's the case or not, but that would be kind of interesting if that is or maybe a similar type of ride system here. But I do think it's going to be a tracked ride system that is a part of this attraction, if I were to guess what they're showing.
I would think so. So I think Scott Walker actually brought up the fact that there has been some shipping done between a German manufacturer, right, Xeron, I do believe, and I think it's Xeron Carousel or something like that, but it's Xeron and Disney, right? And this might actually include, like you said, a track system. I think they have a model in which they showcased on their YouTube channel with like a Ghostbusters themed attraction. I think it's in Germany right now, and that's very much a tracked vehicle. And it's kind of like, okay, well, are we developing these magical casita magical carriages, right, assembled from furniture all around the house, which is a very interesting choice, and having them go track rather than trackless. It's possible they did not go into what type of ride system this was. Okay, and I would have to assume the reason why they didn't is because it might not be trackless, as we've gotten various, versions before, right? We've gotten, Mickey and Minnie's Magical Railway. I'm sorry, Mickey and Minnie's. Woo! It's just too much Disney. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. We've gotten Rise of Resistance. We've gotten, all of those various versions of trackless. So, okay, one more to the list. Doesn't look like they're going to do that. And maybe one of the reasons, Jared, is because trackless not only is it unreliable, but you need a lot of space for it. And there's design limitations attached to it, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And the side, this building is very big for this ride too, which I'm very curious. It would make sense. Now, I don't know the specifics on if obviously anybody can ride this. So you're not talking about a super thrilling ride by any means. Right. Which makes sense for also being in Kanto. But if it is any height, does that preclude them from going levels? Because I'm going to assume the size of this building, there might be levels to it. At least looking at it from the outside. I mean, obviously nothing's on the inside, but it's a huge show building for this ride.
It's a massive show building, a lot of height attached to it as well, but maybe that's just to convey a sense of scale rather than filling it up with, a double-decker type attraction right there. They could do elevator lift systems and so forth, like they did with Rise of Resistance, right? And one of the design limitations of the trackless ride system, or maybe even the tracked version or variant that they might be going with when it comes to Xeron, is that you can't really do inclines.
Right.
For trackless, you have to be completely flat. That is just one of those limitations. And they were able to overcome that with Rise of Resistance, for instance. But remember, to get you down, features is drop. So,
and they had tons of problems with that ride in that massive handoff to the elevator part. I had heard about. I had people tell me something. They were just like, that thing was a nightmare to get to work. So I imagine they probably don't. If this is going to be that could be a really good indication. Like, okay, we're not doing trackless because we've been down this road and we don't want this again. Because another thing too, not only do these rides when they open, but if these things are unreliable, that's going to be another thing that they definitely don't want. And you pointed out before, Thomas Maslum is all about efficiency. And maybe
that's true.
Very like, okay, we want stuff that works. I think you look at the Big Thunder refurb. I think the finale scene there, the reason they went with that scene and not the Disneyland version is that one breaks down a lot and doesn't work. And this was the very simple one that less maintenance could be another factor in this as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think less maintenance, less downtime, I think is definitely a top of mind. We saw this a little bit too when going from Disney's Hollywood Studios or Disney's MGM Studios version of Tower of Terror to DCA's version, right? Now, people who are familiar with the version of Tower of Terror that currently exists at Disney's Hollywood Studios features the fifth dimension scene, right? And it's where you have this handoff between one elevator system to another, right? And the vehicle travels on its own through a very small little wire in the ground to the other point, which is the actual drop that people experience with that beloved attraction. They omitted that from California Adventure. Why? One of that was space, but two, it was efficiency, right? Because that's the point at which that thing fails most often. So why not just go with the drop? Why not just go with one fleet of shafts rather than two? That's why. So it's disappointing, obviously, for fans who are fans of Tower of Terror and love that fifth dimension scene, but kind of makes sense from an operational standpoint. And I will say it did allow them to update that ride later on for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. Anyways, going back to this though, I think you're right, Jared. I think they are looking at this and going, you know what? let's just make this more efficient, more reliable, rather than the whole trackless thing. And I will say, there's only been, I think, 2 rides that have really leveraged that system effectively. One is Pooh's Honey Hunt, I do believe, in certain parts, right? And the other is Mystic Manor. Other than that, I just look at some trackless implementations and I just go, you could probably do that with a track. I don't think you need to necessarily do that with, trackless and have all of the headache and operational headache that comes along with it. What about you?
I agree. I mean, I think Mickey Minis is cool when you see some of this trackless stuff, but in terms of how much does that add to the enjoyment of the ride once you get, I kind of look at it in, maybe there people disagree, but like more of a novelty thing, like, oh, it's trackless, it's cool.
Yeah.
But your enjoyment of a ride, I don't think really comes down to like, oh, I saw there was a track. You know what I mean? I just don't think that is really such a determining factor. And if they are a big headache, I could definitely see them. And maybe this was before Masloom came involved. I don't imagine whenever he was named chairman that they changed the ride system for this because they already started construction. But one could look at that and say, let's stick to something that's a little bit more reliable, given a lot of the criticism that they have gotten about Tiana's Wars and all of its issues with Rise of the Resistance and things. You could see a natural tendency to lean that way on something where there may be. I think the big play here is obviously Encanto and the magicalness of that. So it's maybe not as much about the ride system as it is everything you see. That's the feature point here. And maybe it's, I would imagine, having a track is probably cheaper than trackless. And then you look at the operating cost on top of it. So I could definitely see that. I think we go that way.
And it allows you, I know Xeron's implementation allows for a little bit more of a dynamic approach, right? Where you can actually have those vehicles actually do stuff, right? Like maybe not full simulator, but you can have some motion, some degree of thrill, potentially, as any thrill that you actually implement that doesn't require a height requirement would provide. That is also maybe an additional benefit you actually get out of this. I'm not sure they're going that direction. I'm just saying, though, you can kind of see, we're making the argument why they might, want to step away from that, at least here. I'll say, too, I think the best, thing about the trackless ride system is that it allows your ride to not be linear in how it's constructed, how it's actually laid out, right? But if you're ending up in the same rooms anyway, which a lot of these trackless ride systems have implemented, do you necessarily need to be trackless? I don't know. As a storytelling canvas, I'm a little bit mixed on that, and we've seen mixed interpretations before. But C'est la vie. They are going with this. By the way, the story of this attraction, Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto, is we're going back to when Antonio actually was gifted his powers, right? And that, he can talk to animals. That was his big gift. Yep. And it's a celebration. So it's another attraction in which we're having a party.
Yeah, and we assumed, how they were going to fit this into Animal Kingdom was Antonio, if you've seen the movie.
Right.
That was the most obvious thing that they were probably going to do with this was his storyline.
And hey, after seeing Tiana's By Adventure, just go with the obvious. Just go with what everybody expects. Don't reinvent the wheel.
You don't need Antonio's journey into puberty while we're on this ride. You're like, how about no? Just keep it to the animals and
just do Antonio.
Well, and what you were saying about the ride system too, if you've seen Encanto, when they're not only on these things are like, I guess you'd almost say they're living things in this house. So it would make some sense that there would be some, play within these on some level along it, which, that could be one reason why they may go with a ride system like that would be, part of my guess there.
Right. Exactly. So it's, I think they're going with something a little bit more straightforward, and I think they should. Now, a lot of people have suggested, outside of the whole party aspect, which I think is kind of funny, it's always a party. It's always a celebration.
Have a good time.
Always have a good time. But a lot of people are speculating that maybe, in fact, you don't actually understand the animals before, but after he gets his gift, now you are imparted with the ability to understand what they're saying. So kind of like the hydrophone technology for Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage kind of thing, where at one point it's just sounds, another point it's actually them talking. Maybe they actually go with that specific route right there. You can see a lot of the voice cast from Encanto returning for their roles for this attraction, which is pretty cool. And from what we understand, when you actually hit Antonio's room and all of that grandness It's supposed to be very, very impressive, which might actually indicate why the scale is necessary for this specific attraction. Anywho's, that's what we have for Tropical Americas.
Yeah. I would agree. That could be the reason for the big show building, which I hope is the case. I would love to see a ride that really utilizes the size and scale for something like that, especially if you're going to go really big with this. You know, and if you've seen Encanto, most people probably have. When I heard they're doing a ride off the house, I'm just like, that's going to be interesting because that house is very interesting when you're inside of there. So maybe that is, I would imagine that house is 2 stories. Maybe they really take advantage of that scale and show some of that stuff. So it's definitely possible there.
Definitely possible indeed. Really, I think Encanto is the one that people are most looking forward to. If I had to guess, obviously Indiana Jones is awesome, but people have waited for an Encanto ride for a long time. People want a brand new dark ride for Animal Kingdom, so it's got a lot of that going for it. I think that's why it's going to be the last one that open and the one that marketing is going to be most inclined to showcase.
And it gives something to do at Animal Kingdom, having no height requirement, which is an issue of that park too.
Big deal. That's a big deal. Shouldn't be understated right there. You were exactly right. All right. I guess that brings us to Monsters Incorporated right here. Just want to make sure that in my role, I thought I had, let me just see right here before I show it. I thought I had the updated artwork that they had released right here. I do. Okay, good. I just want to make sure about that before putting this on screen right here. Okay, let's go ahead and get that started. So Monstropolis is what we have received from the entertainment showcase right there. Not a whole lot on the floor of the pavilion, which is interesting. Just a couple of creatures, right? Just like 3-eared rabbit and 3-eyed squirrel and 2-headed pigeons and all that kind of stuff. Not really anything substantial from like a model's perspective or anything else, which was a little bit surprising. I myself was saying, hey, what's going on with Monstropolis? Well, it turns out that it's so far along that guess what? The bulk of Monstropolis will be opening next year. Now, I do believe that's omitting the coaster, which I do believe is going to be a little bit longer in that process. But we finally got some information about stuff like Harryhausen's, for example, right? And how they're going to have an audio-animatronic, version of that octopus right there, cooking up some sushi. That actually looked pretty good. The other thing, too, is we got a little bit more information about the Glob Theater and how it's going to be the Muppets putting not the Muppets, it's Muppet Vision 3D. So there you go.
They'll always live on that building on some level there.
I know, right? No, the monsters are going to put on a show, and it looks like maybe like a variety act or some kind. And it's Mike and Sully wanting to bring down the house, as it were. I
think the show's called Welcome to Monstropolis, is what they said, and they had a musical number which maybe implied that song might be part of this show, but they didn't go into any real details on a lot of this stuff.
I love how, too, when they were talking about that musical number right there, it's like, hey, it's going to be done by Randy Newman, and it's going to be Randy Newman's first time that he's ever done a musical number for any attraction, any Disney park ever. And it's like, yes, you could have had Randy Newman do some work on Tiana's By Adventure because he did the soundtrack for Princess and the Frog back in the day, but alas, they went another route. So it's kind of funny that, yeah, this is Randy Newman's first appearance, even though he made those songs.
I'm okay with it because Randy Newman singing, I'm like, I'm like, I never have liked his singing. My son is like really into Toy Story, and so every time that movie plays, I'm just like, gosh, how did that guy get into singing? But
you got offended me.
Yeah, it's just
you
not.
Got offended me. Yeah, exactly.
Years ago, Will Sasso did like a skit on Mad TV, like, as he was Randy Newman, and he kind of nails it, even in his like joking impression of him. I'm like, it kind of sounds just like him, but that is a cool aspect. You bring him into this, and he obviously is beloved by the Disney crowd, so that's something that people want to see. So I get that.
Right, get that as well. Jonas is really good at singing Randy Newman. Wooful, I do agree with you. The Harry's animatronic wasn't very overwhelming, this by quality, I do believe. Yeah, I mean, I will say it's not like the most groundbreaking thing they've ever done, but I just kind of remember Harryhausen's from the Monsters, Inc. attraction over at Disney California Adventure, and he didn't move all that much. So the thing that he was doing, the octopus arms and stuff with the eyeballs going, and it looked pretty cool. And if you have that in a restaurant, hey,
yeah,
that's A+ right there. So I'll give him credit for that. But the Glob Theater thing concept there, I don't know. I mean, Jared, did Muppets have to go away for this thing? What do you think?
I don't think it did, but obviously, I mean, I think the issue with the Muppets has been, and maybe they're trying to rectify it as they didn't understand how much it was beloved by a certain aspect of the fan base. And when they announced, I think they thought when they announced that was going away after the last D23 on that Dark Monday, that they just thought people would be like, oh, we're getting Monsters Inc. in here. That's cool. And then they saw the backlash from it. And they're like, why don't we just put it into Rock and Roller Coaster kind of to appease these? Because they're really mad about
Exactly.
this. And they had no off ramp for Rivers of America. They were just like, well, that's going. So at least throw them a bone here on this one.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people that are going to, I mean, it's always going to be compared to that. And I don't think this is going to be a same type of show as that one was. But obviously, we're so far down. I don't think
so.
Yeah. I would agree, though. You didn't have to get rid of Muppets for the. You could have expanded even further into the parking lot if you wanted to do the whole land, but obviously they just didn't go that route.
Right, exactly. So they didn't go that route, and it's unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen the Muppets actually be maintained. I think you could have done that. You could have had some transition point between Monstropolis and Muppets, but I said, this is what we're gonna have every single thing be immersive. And okay, you can see right here in this artwork, it could be a combination of animatronics and screens. Pretty sure that's a screen up in the upper balcony right there, and you might have, maybe you have a drummer out there that's animatronic. We'll see, but you can see like there's a canister actually flying into the audience. Now I don't see any 3D glasses on people. I see like one person wearing a pair of glasses. So is this going to be 3D or not? Not sure. It should be interesting, but now is this necessarily going to make this kind of experience redundant when you take a look at the Monsters Inc. attraction that's actually in Magic Kingdom? We'll see. A lot of unanswered questions regarding all of that and more. I will say, though, the coaster looks pretty good right there. I believe, what was the quote there? It was, they showed a little bit of the load area. Right, and there's this kind of visualization that they showed, and I do wish I had it. I do apologize. I was trying to collect all kinds of assets for the show. I just couldn't include it. But they do have what is it? This vertical lift system right from the load area, which they showed before, I think by South by Southwest. But now we have like a colored illustration of it, and I do believe it rises. What is that? 40 feet, Jared? I can't remember.
40 feet in 6 seconds. I believe is what
I think it was 4 seconds.
Was it 4 seconds? Okay. It was pretty quick, but it was, But 40 feet, I do know for sure.
Right, okay. So 40 feet, 4 seconds. That's actually pretty extraordinary right there. I know it's 4 seconds. It's quick, right? I was like, whoa, okay. And then they're saying it's going to launch off from that point. So it's going to be a launching coaster. We already know that it's going to be an invert, right, in which you're actually sitting below the track right there, something Disney's never done before. Should be pretty cool. I do worry about how thrilling it's going to be, how intense it's going to be. We did hear from Braden in his video on Mickey Views right there talking about Space Mountain and how he was saying that Disney might be leaning towards this direction of not including a lot of airtime moments in these coasters because they're concerned about loose objects actually falling out, which is kind of an interesting way of doing it, right? Instead of doing the Universal thing where everybody goes through, metal detectors.
Right.
Obviously, got a little bit of a different tact here. So I do kind of wonder what that coaster experience is going to look like. Obviously, people have been waiting for a Dora coaster in Disney's Hollywood Studios for years, and in fact, at one point, they actually showed it off at a very different juncture in the company's history, but didn't actually go forward with it. So people are really excited about this. I think that Dora coaster is going to take a little time there, guys. I don't think it's opening next year with the land, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they even said they were talking about this and showing a little bit of the stuff, and then one of the Imagineers just said, like, well, the coaster, it's coming along, but it's a little further down the road. How about we just, we'll open this up next year? And that was it. It just cut away to a song.
That was it.
It's like, okay. So this is another one here that it's going to, like Galaxy's Edge, it's going to open in here. Now you're going to have, I imagine, a part of, Galaxy's Edge obviously opened up with 2 rides. Well, initially 1, but 2 rides of these experiences, droid building and the lightsaber and the eating. A lot of this land is going to be focused. Obviously, going to have the show in here. That's going to be an easy thing to turn around. But it's going to be the Harry Houston's. They said something about a pizza restaurant in here. Something about some people are speculating about a speakeasy. There was something they mentioned about a hideaway place in here.
Oh,
which is kind of
that's
interesting.
Yeah, because the speakeasy kind of thing for Disney, that actually goes back to the 1930s concept that they had for Main Street at Disneyland Paris back in the day. So that would be kind of cool if they implemented that.
Yeah, and so I think this one, and I agree. Remy D had said that, I think people, general audience, be much more excited for this than they are for Muppets. I agree. I just think that Disney was a little caught flat-footed. I just don't think that they really understood how Muppets were viewed. And mind you, Disney has attractions where the wait times are really nothing, and they take it away. All of a sudden, people are like, "What is going on here?" And they're like, "Whoa, okay, we thought you guys didn't like this ride." But I think this will go over well. People, like you said, people have been asking for a Doors coaster for ever. I mean, this is when they announced this. It was like, wasn't this rumored like 10 years before? So
yes,
I do imagine this goes over pretty well. It's one of these things where it's like, if you just have a lot of this stuff that they had in the movie, which it looks like they're doing, it's probably pretty simple to pull off here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just bring stuff from the movies, put it in here, which seems like they're doing. I'm sure they're going to monetize it with merchandise. And I think the Harry Houston's place is going to be very pricey because they said something about a very intimate atmosphere to go with your schnookums.
Oh.
And I think you're talking sushi. I could see that being a pricey dinner place here for that. But yeah, again, if this opened in 27, I'm going to imagine it's going to be toward the later part of 27. I wonder if that door coaster is even a year later. Could it be even 2 years?
Right. I think it's at least 1 year later. I do not have that thing open in 2027. Yeah, that's 2028. There's no way. I am not convinced it's going to be a short time span for that. I think it's, that's going to be the signature element of this lane. I don't think they're going to, rush that. I think they're going to take their time with that. Yeah. We've seen how long it takes to build a coaster like Trump. So can I see it going next year? No, it's not even fully enclosed right now. So that's just kind of.
I mean, they've made some good progress on it, but even whenever it's fully enclosed, I mean, you're talking, and that's the thing with these, and this is like you said, this type of coaster Disney's never done. So then you got the whole testing aspect of it, and I hope it's not the case. I could see this thing being 2029 before the coaster opens. I wouldn't be shocked by it if that were to happen. Maybe earlier, 29 or something like that. But again, from the marketing, what they're going to do with this stuff, what is that messaging going to be? If these lands if you have multiple of these lands opening partially, they're going to be very careful about what they promote in this stuff, because you're going to have people coming in here expecting them on the door coaster, and you got a show and some places to eat, and that's going to be maybe it in here. And I don't know. To me, Galaxy's Edge suffered from that too. When you walked in there, Smuggler's Run, Oga's, and that was this, and you're like, okay, like you can pay a bunch of money to do the droid stuff and the lightsaber stuff, but it's more of a quarter day, half day thing. You couldn't spend, I guess you could, but realistically, most people aren't spending all day in Galaxy's Edge at that point. I don't know if they even are today. So that gets really interesting about the marketing and really the reaction to it. And I'm very curious when they do open these things. Obviously, they're expecting a lot more people on property. Are people going to flock outside of APs and locals to partially open lands? I don't know.
I don't know, but that's the way they're going. And like you said, I don't think it worked in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge's favor. I don't think it's currently working in Avengers Campus's favor. I have, you only make that first impression one time.
Right.
And when you don't have a big ride to really anchor stuff, things can fall apart. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what this is actually like right there. Slacker Wannabe coming in here saying they'll have a Build a Monster shop. That should be pretty interesting right there. Pizza would be cool. And let's see, HH in Orlando, that's a long time for a coaster. I do agree, but it's not a long time for a Disney coaster.
I was going to say, look at Tron. Look at Pandora. I mean, a lot of this stuff, like, if it was Universal and how quickly they build, I'd be like, they could probably get this done by 27, maybe early 28 or something. But I mean,
true.
I hope for the best, but until I'm kind of with this with Disney, until they actually show that they can build this stuff quicker, which I'm sure they have every capability of doing it, because I don't think they have a secret construction crew that Universal doesn't have, and they just have top tier people. But and then like in Remedy, I hope it's at least 90 seconds long. We also don't know how long it is either.
Right.
That's another question about this probably at some point, but
I have questions about that.
Yeah.
I got questions.
I do wonder the size of that building. I mean, it probably have levels to it, is my guess. But yeah, I mean, and who's this land for? Because I think somebody, even a Slacker wannabe, said this is only 20 years after the popularity of the movies. I mean, is this going to appeal toward kids, or is this going to be more toward like the Disney adult crowd? And really, how thrilling is the coaster because of that? I mean, my kids, I mean, they're aware of monsters, but it's not something that they are like, beating down the hatch for.
Right.
And so that's another kind of question I've always had. I think it'll be successful, but I'm just, the demo of this, I'm kind of curious about.
I'm very curious as well. A lot of unanswered questions about Monstropolis. Like people have brought out 20 years after the first film came out, like how relevant is this franchise? Was this the one for Disney's Hollywood Studios? There's just a lot of different things. I guess we'll just have to see when it actually opens, because guess what, folks? As is the theme for this entire experiences showcase and even D23 itself, not a lot of detail. So we're just gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
Let's see right here. Oh, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen right there. And then we are going to move on to, I do believe we're at this point, Magic Kingdom Piston Peak.
Before we hit that, we do have a 440 jewels from Steve Mammon. I think I got that right. 55.95. 440 jewels. That's Uncle Alert. I think the chat did something fun when it did that last time with Uncle Alert. Like I said last time, I know Uncle Alert's good. I was told it's good, so I'm not going to operate on the assumption that it's good. So we'll see there. But
I'm hoping so, right?
For that. If not, I don't need to know. It's fine. It's no big deal.
Yes, and right. Appreciate every single person out there supporting us, whether you're, super chatting, Uncle Alerts, jewels, subscriptions, views, likes, everything.
Commenting, whatever. We appreciate you guys. We love unks. All right. See, now I feel old. I'm like, these terms get thrown out here, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So I'm just rolling the dice here, but I appreciate it.
We're rolling. Hey, look, restrooms. Okay, so the Piston Peak model, that was the first thing that was showcased. I think that really kind of kicked off the show for the park's standpoint, right? They had that media walkthrough on Thursday night, and this was the one model, the one big model that they had there. Everything else is parcel, there weren't a lot of models there, which I was kind of stunned by. Bruce Fong going up there saying, "Oh, there's the biggest Imagineering showcase we've ever." Yeah, it's filled with nothing. Okay, that's a whole other story. All right, but the big 4-acre model, boom, there you go. That's Piston Peak right there. Obviously, a lot of questions surrounding this. And I think they wanted to go ahead and cool expectations, especially with the loss of the beloved Rivers of America, Liberty Bell, Tom Sawyer's Island, everything else. So they put a lot of emphasis on Piston Peak, a lot of emphasis on this kind of Cars Land attraction coming to Magic Kingdom. And we now know of 2 different attractions here. It's going to be Off-Road Rally Racers, right? The kind of oh wait, no, it's not Off-Road Rally Racers.
What they call it? The name of it was.
It was. Let me see. Okay, so you have. All right. Miss Fritter's Daredevil Spin Along, which we'll get into that in just a second. And you have Cars Ridge Run Rally. No racers whatsoever. I think that's a big distinction right there, because before it kind of looked like you were going to race with that classic concept art. Now it's all single file. Right. So it's like, that's interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and go with that Fritters attraction first, because a lot of people were asking questions about that. What is that second attraction that we're getting? Obviously, this whole thing, this whole assemblage is going to be the more kid-friendly of the 2 experiences coming to Magic Kingdom, right? Obviously, Villains Land, it's a whole different thing. We'll get there. But because this is more kid-friendly, we're going to have, 2 attractions that are a little bit more kid-friendly. This is for the little ones, obviously, and this one right here, themed around the school bus, featured in Cars 3, which is an interesting choice. Miss Fritter's Daredevil Spin Along. It looks to me, Jared, this is basically the 4-wheel rally attraction in Disneyland Paris's Disney Adventure World, but here.
Yeah.
Which people who aren't familiar, that's kind of a combination of aliens, whirling saucers, and teacups.
Yeah, so. I kind of got that impression too. And It is interesting because I agree that you don't have the racing aspect now. There was that there had that permit or not permit copyright thing or something out there about that you can choose a course. Might be able to on the big ride. That was something that was out there. Maybe some of the concept art maybe is a little bit hazy on that. Yeah, there's just further thing. I agree. Cars 3 to choose to put in here is interesting given. I mean, the whole reason Cars is going in here is the merchandise it moves.
Absolutely.
And the merchandise it moves is Lightning McQueen. And
right.
He is going to be part, I guess, commentating the races with Mater, but not really featured in this land. I don't know what to make of this. I mean, there's a lot of things about this. Like when you're talking about the land as a whole here, I love the idea of a national park land. I think the land itself looks pretty cool. I think I like all that idea. But I'm right where I was when they announced this, which was I like the concept idea of this, but how in the world do cartoon cars fit into Frontierland? And my thinking is Frontier, and we'll get into the other tracks. I had to get this off my chest. I feel like, okay, does this fit into Frontierland, or is Frontierland going to have to fit to what this is? And I feel like we probably know the answer to that because I just don't know how, googly-eyed cartoon cars racing around Frontierland really makes sense. Currently, what we know of Frontierland, unless there's a change or I don't know, maybe they don't change the name of it, but it's just Frontierland in name only. To me, this kind of cements that because you're just going to have Miss Fritter in here and you're going to have this. It's an odd choice for Miss Fritter. And someone pointed out it's not the most kid-friendly thing. I don't know if it's not kid-friendly. I mean, my son loves cars. And so he, I showed him this. He was like, oh, that's really cool. So I think kids will gravitate toward parts of this, obviously. And things to do in here for kids makes a lot of sense. I think some people are disappointed by only 2 rides in here, but that's going to be a common theme because we heard about Villains Land as well. It's interesting choices here, but I think the land itself just looking at it on its own without anything else around it looks beautiful. It's just weird with cars involved. And then where it's at is kind of where I'm currently setting with all this.
Right. So, okay, let's talk about that a little bit right there, because this is obviously super controversial. and notice how people aren't necessarily, in an uproar over Villains Land. And that's just it speaks to a couple of things playing out there, right? The fans' enthusiasm for cars versus like the normies' enthusiasm for cars. Obviously, they're favoring the general audience in this regard, right? And it's a tough fit within this place. And they did have a panel on all of this stuff. And the lead Imagineer can't tell you his name. Sorry, I know I should have written it down in the notes. I
can picture his face. I'm the same way. I can't remember his name though.
Right. Okay. So he broke it down. All right. And he broke out this model or this map, this overview of the West Side without Rivers of America. And he was like, look, listen, the West Side of Rivers of America is very, very interesting because it's a bunch of distinct locations. So, and I think he was saying like throughout North America or whatever. And he has this labeling going on with, Tiana's by Adventure connected to New Orleans, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad connected to, Utah's, essentially Bryce Canyon, right? You had Liberty Square, and that was depicted as basically like Massachusetts, Boston, or whatever. And like that's kind of how they were describing this as. And if any of you guys recall that whole thing, that's kind of a recontextualization, right? Of the West Side. It wasn't just about the places, it was about the time periods. And so it's like, okay, so you've labeled where all these things are, but you don't go into the time periods depicted. This is why it's kind of like, how does Cars fit with a 1776 colonial America or a 1930s New Orleans or a 1850s, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Utah area? Guess what? It doesn't, which is why they had that, description provided, right? They're trying to recontextualize the assemblage of Frontierland or the West Side of Magic Kingdom, as well as, trying to shoehorn this thing in. Again, this is, I think, management wanted to get as much ROI as possible out of Magic Kingdom, so they're doing the Cars thing, which is not a bad move. But of course, it came at the expense of Rivers of America, and it's plucked right in between all of these very time-specific stories right here. So yes, to your point, Jared, it doesn't fit. They're not trying to make it fit. They're trying to rework everything else, you know. Now, they did say Liberty Square is safe. They said this, you know, on stage. So very, very good, at least for now. We'll see what other, you know, initiatives that management has in store for us, right? But they said it was safe at least, and when you look at the model, it does look like that exterior structure connected to Haunted Mansion is going to be restrooms, which is interesting. That's a choice, but that's where they're going.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because we had talked about that when I saw the restrooms there. I'm wondering if Columbia Harbor House, because we brought it before, how now there's no harbor. So how much sense does that restaurant make? Maybe that becomes the Haunted Mansion lounge everybody's been wanting. I mean, that's a spot. Mm-hmm. It's right next to Memento Mori. It's right next to Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Those lounges don't have to be huge. You do have 2 stories in Columbia Harbor House. Maybe that's what that is, which wouldn't surprise me. That would probably be something that would be pretty welcome in there. I think is definitely possible. So I heard that too, and I was like, okay. I mean, I guess it doesn't mean in 10 years they may not do something with it, but I think that did alleviate some, because I think they did hear that out there being like, okay, then that means Liberty Square's days are numbered. And like I said before, even if they were going to get rid of it, they were not going to go on stage and say that at all. But
for the 250th anniversary of the country.
Yeah. And I'm just so torn looking at this, because I can look at this and honestly, I love the way this land looks. I do. My whole issue, like I said, is just where they plopped it. And you said, time sensitive. There's a multitude of places you could have put this, and I don't think you had any of the controversy around it. And mind you, even if it doesn't make any sense, the normie crowd may not even care. It may just be us people that look at this stuff of what they used to really prioritize in the parks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know at this point if they're going to really try to sell you on that. I think they may just put it in here and just be like, it is what it is. It's here. And it's attractions. And if the attractions are good, the land's good, I suppose for a lot of people that could be good enough. I even think, I told my wife, I'm like, you know what? If we go in here and this land's fantastic, I can judge on the land itself, but still come away being like, what is it doing here? Sort of thing. But I guess you could say that about Moana Journey of Water. You could say that about, some people would point to Frozen in Epcot as well. So it's not the first time we have seen a project on Disney property that doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's a strong IP and they just want to put it in there. And, obviously they've had positive returns off that, and that's what they're looking at here. Now, one thing I will say, and I think Remedy, somebody pointed out in the chat, and I had the same question. They talked about going up the mountain on the main ride there, and then you're going down. I'm curious how they that sounds cool. I'm curious how they pull that off with they said you're going to go to snow-capped mountains and things like that. Sounds cool. Got geysers all around you. It has really cool aspects to it. I am curious if they really further try and contextualize this, or if they just basically just go, it's cars. You guys want it, come and get it. Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what they're going to do, right? It's like, and they were like, okay, well, how do we bring all these disparate points of North America together? Let's go ahead and do something that's wilderness-based, frontier-based, obviously. They've done Wilderness Lodge. They've done, what is it? Fort Wilderness and all of that. And that's kind of the inspiration. That's a jumping off point for a lot of this stuff. So it's like, okay, fair enough. It's not that distinct, right, from maybe like Tom Sawyer's Island, but the timeline obviously has shifted considerably, right? And I guess what is it? That's where they get to the planes, right? That portion of the Cars world that they're bringing into this place. Okay, fair enough. It's not going to be Radiator Springs. It's not going to be, the deserts of Arizona/California. They're going with this. Fine, fair enough, whatever. They just want you to be comfortable, Jared, with the idea that, time and timelines and all of that, that's yesterday's Imagineering. This is today, where we're going to combine all of these stories as much as possible. Whatever. This is what they're going with. And you'll notice that, it's only about a 4.5 acre land right there. It does maximize that space fairly well, right? Because you have an attraction basically taking up the perimeter roughly of the land. And that's the other thing too, right? Because this is not huge, obviously you want to do something with racers and all of that, dual tracks and speed. It just wasn't possible here unless you wanted that ride to be basically a quarter-mile stretch, right? So it's like, what do? You are going for more of a sensory experience with the whole kind of sensation of actually going through, what is it? These kind of valleys, canyons, this kind of distinct mountainous terrain, right? And getting the feel of that. So you can think of it roughly as a combination, maybe perhaps between Indiana Jones or Dinosaur and Test Track / Raider Springs Racers. That's kind of, I think, the idea that they went with here, which is probably appropriate, makes sense. The Imagineer on stage yesterday did actually describe, hey, you're going to be going up the mountain right there. It's going to get a little bumpy, and then you're going down. It's going to get real bumpy and stuff like that. So that's kind of where they're going with right here. Obviously, they have been working on this quite considerably. We know that they have because we had more concept images of this than any other land or any other project back in the day. So this has been in development for quite some time. Apparently, it's going to be taking off of that caricature or architecture, right? Carified. So, kind of wider pathways, right? Making you believe that this is the Cars world that you're inhabiting right here, which is very, very interesting. Look, I think a lot of this is there's some stuff here that's genuinely awesome, right? I think some of the architectural elements are pretty cool, the mountains and all of that, but a lot of it does rely on trees, Jared, and I just don't know if they're going to go with a bunch of old growths for this. Is this the land how it will look 20 years from now or on opening day? That's the question.
I wonder that too, because there's a lot of trees. I believe if you bring in a lot of that's going to increase your budget a lot. If you're bringing in big trees, you can do it, but you got to have the money to back it up. That's going to be interesting because one of the big criticisms we've talked about is new areas of lack of shade. And really, eventually it grows in. Epic's the same thing. A lot of these new parks, new lands have the same problem. Toy Story Land is probably the most notorious for it, which just opened up with just zero shading. So, I mean, I'm the same with you. A lot of this stuff does look really cool. I love the aspect of this. Like I said, a national park land that actually would make a lot of sense in Frontierland. It's just simply the era and the IP of it. But I suppose if it is, now I will say this, if it's a great land, if they pull this thing off and it is like on the same level as Radiator Springs, I've said this before about like my critiques of Spider-Man Brand New Day. I love that movie. There are some things in that third act where I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can forgive things that are really, really fun and well done, which I did with that movie. I gave it 9 out of 10 even with the issues. If this land is really that great, it could alleviate. There's always going to be those complaints, and I may always have those complaints, but at the same time, my son loves cars. He will love this land. He will absolutely go in here and he will adore this. So as a parent, as somebody can look at this, I can sit here and say, it's really cool. It's probably, I guess, Jeff Valley as, he didn't like the waters, but I'm sure it's going to make him more money with this in here. And if it's well done, okay, we have a great land that doesn't make sense where it's at, but the first time it's happened. I suppose that's maybe the thinking here and just being like, they're not going to come out and say, guys, we just want to make a lot of money. But I think this is what this is of like, we just want to make more money from this park, and this is going to help us do that. But if you do get an awesome land, I suppose some of the things can be forgiven on some level for some people. I think when you're probably talking normie audience of this, I don't know how much they're going to know nor care about a frontier land. And I think we are seeing much more stuff in the Disney parks be for the normie crowd. And maybe that's why they're throwing some bones out there to the fan base for Figment, for some of these things of like giving the fans some stuff they want and giving the normie crowd which they want to come in, give them what they want, which is cars and stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing towards the general audience, right? And at some point, you have to. You can't just placate fans because you have to build an audience, not necessarily just play to the existing ones, right? So it makes sense that you want to involve, your most marketable franchises within your premium destination that is Walt Disney World. Totally get that. Totally understand that. This is Disney's Hot Wheels, and this sells like hotcakes, right? This is an extremely profitable brand for them, especially from a merchandising aspect. And so, incorporating cars into Magic Kingdom, I can obviously see how that took place. But like you said, right? Yeah. Came at the expense of Tom Sawyer's Island, Rivers of America, and Liberty Bell. Don't like that myself, but you gotta look at this objectively, right? From a manager standpoint, one makes money in the form of Pistol Peak. One costs you money, and you can't necessarily sell or market or sell any lane on that. So, which one won? We know which one won. That's why Rivers of America is no longer. But and I still have problems with this, guys. I'm probably never going to get over this, just like I'm never going to get over Splash Mountain. But c'est la vie. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going, and we're going with Piston Peak. I don't know if, in fact, they can bring this vision to reality, especially with the amount of nature that is on offer right here. Like, people love, I'd say, like the Golden State area of Disney Comfort Adventure, right? Some people actually say that's one of the best areas and so forth. But people will remember that back in 2001, that area was basically received just like every other area of DCA, it was hot, it didn't actually immerse you, and it wasn't necessarily special. Obviously, that changed over time, like 20 years, for example, in the Golden State cases, in the Golden State's case at DCA, when those trees actually matured. Right. Are we going to see something like this here? Because it relies heavily on trees, folks. There is a little slide in here embedded in there with no trees on this model. It changes the feel completely, and it would, right? We'll see where they go.
Point. Well, and that's a valid point, too, because I think if they open this up, I mean, as much flag as Disney gets about concept art not looking like the real thing, I mean, what you're seeing here looks awesome, but if they open this lane and those trees are, real skinny, it's going to change how this looks, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And so I imagine maybe there is going to be, now I imagine on the mountain here, you're going to have some fake trees. Like, you might have some real trees sprinkled in with some fake ones that maybe make up the difference on some level, but right. I think that could definitely be something they do. Now, one thing I did see some people pointing to, does this have the same amount of water as they showed in the initial concept art? Because I kind of felt like it was trying to throw it. I feel like it does, but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't taken a super like in-depth look at every angle of this model, but I feel like it does have water in there.
Let's go back there real fast, because that is the water in this place. Oh, whoops. Do apologize. I restarted it, which you can kind of see right there, by the way, what it actually looks without trees. And so, right, like it changes the feel considerably, right? That's why I'm saying, like, you have to consider the fact that
it's like a farm.
Right. And so, like, this is kind of an exercise in where the investment's going, right? Where's the rock work? How much rock work are we actually getting? How many new structures are we actually getting? And you get a sense without those trees in place, which adds a lot of detail to the land, but obviously could be a substitute for other things. So I want to go back to that piece of, or that photo of this model right here showing the water. Yeah, so that water... as seen from the other side of this, is basically the extent. It's basically a little stream. And obviously they emphasize water in that kind of cartoon art that they had, but it's not proportion, right? This is not going to be, here you go, an assemblage of water everywhere. You're going to have some cascading waterfalls, obviously. The snow melts and everything like that. You see that waterfall right there. But in no way is this a substitute for the Rivers of America and its menagerie with all that water right there. And I think a lot of this comes down to, too, this has to interact with Sea Uninspired Adventure as it currently stands, right? And, it interacted with the Rivers of America with that water feature and everything else. Obviously, you have to have a replacement for that. Now that you've got Rivers of America, and I think this is the way to do that. So, again, if everybody's like, oh, yeah, we're getting River... it's a stream, folks. That's what you're saying.
I mean, I guess some water is better than no water in that situation. Given maybe Joe Shoot isn't as anti-water as Jeff Vale seemingly was on many things.
Exactly. Water hurt him at one point. I just want to know that story.
His childhood was like, I don't want anything to do with water. It's terrible. But no, I mean, realistically, like the land itself, I do think it looks great. And I hope the trees come in like this, and we'll see if maybe they tie in some more stuff. But I do think realistically, maybe not right away, but I think Frontierland is more than likely going to change around it to make, because this is clearly going to be the center point of that area, and it makes sense why you would then make everything else around it, which is why people had the fears about Liberty Square because of that. And then going off of that, and somebody actually brought up maybe the Columbia Harbor House, maybe they finally do a Snuggly Duckling bar lounge like from Tangle. That could be, although I think that's too close, honestly, to if I were to guess, I think they probably would do Haunted Mansion and not Tangled. Tangled, which I will always contend is the best princess movie that's ever been made by Disney. But yeah, we'll see. Like I hope it's good. 4 acres with 2 lands. That's a pretty good utilization of the size to give them credit for fitting that in there. So we'll see. But they did not give it an opening date for this either. They gave
no opening date.
No opening date.
They did say though, the main ride is designed to operate in the ring.
I was going to mention that. That's a good point, and that is something that I think people had. Now, recently, I know Madison Epic recently got cleared for that. I don't know what constitutes getting cleared for rain or not, but I think that is a good distinction for Florida. Now, that doesn't mean that when there's lightning, it's still going to shut down. But if it's just rain, it could run, which I guess could be enjoyable or painful. I don't know. If you guys are in a coaster in the rain, it can kind of hurt on some speeds, but it could be fun.
I do kind of wonder too, this is gonna I didn't see a ton of shade along that ride track right there. Does this get hot, as it's mostly an outdoor ride? That's another thing you have to consider. Like, there's a lot of questions with this as well. And guess what, folks? You know how much detail that they provided? Well, you're seeing it right there. Not much. So, in terms of the operational aspects and everything like that. But they did assure, hey, it's supposed to operate in the rain, which is good. A lot of people were concerned, obviously, from Test Track and Radius Rings Racers and all of that. It does look like the areas around there are basically preserved. Obviously, we didn't get any information on Liberty Bell, which I would have loved to have seen. But this is it. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this works. It seems to be very, very well reviewed by people who have actually seen this model in person, and all the fan chatter around this, which is good. I just there's still some open questions that we'll have answered, I'm sure, soon. That brings us to the backside there. But before then, I'm sure you have super chats, right?
We got a few here, and apparently Bradley here says rides, not lands. Did I say lands? My apologies. I meant rides. My apologies. Listen, I'm tired. All right, it's been a long day. I'm kidding.
It's been a long weekend for me, so I'm exhausted. So
we went to it was 96 today. We went to Disney Springs and a couple of things. I went to Jock Lindsay's, which is always a good time there. We did that, and then we went to Hollywood Studios, and that was, man, that park is hot when it's hot outside. We were there for a couple hours. We're just like, okay, and then we drove home, so it was a long day. But I do have a couple super chats here. The FTM 22 for $2, thank you, says cars only fits there if you have organic fuel. Maybe they bring back the hippie. Is it Fillmore? I think that it's
Fillmore. Yeah. Organic fuel, man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Then we got Cliff for 5. Thank you, Cliff. It says, who here loved the sounds of the Liberty Bell? The stream, the whistle, the huff, breathing, and I know, man. One thing I do love about Silver Dollar City still has aspects of that with their train. And that is one thing I do love that you get the train. But man, I do think to me, the rivers, and I understand the economical argument, but I think what frustrates people about the decision to do this is you're not limited theoretically like Disneyland. It makes some sense. It's like you guys have even talked. It's like a puzzle. You got to move it here, and you can. If you have the will to do this, you can expand it. You could have kept it, but obviously they didn't want to for obvious reasons. There's a lot of rumors that the rivers needed a lot of work. It was just like you said, it was just costing them money. I kind of wish if the rivers really did have a big issue, I think this would have gone over much better if it was like, listen, guys, we know this, we're going to maintain this, but like, it's just the money to put into this is just going to end up, it doesn't make sense. But I don't know, maybe under tomorrow that's a little bit different because he has some, he is more candid, I will simply say, than Bob Iger ever was. Bob Iger apparently did get a window on Main Street, by the way, for chief architect. What is it? Chief architect? I think it's what it said. Which
Jared, don't.
Hold on. Now I know you saw this on Twitter. I'll bring to the point.
Please.
I did update the window to what it should be saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this will happen in real life or not, but I use a little AI on here. His window says Chief Acquisitions Officer. Shout out to Alicia Stella. She's kind of the one that said it should say Chief or Acquisitions Officer. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's actually what he did really well. So, but Robert, Bob Iger did get his, his flowers during this whole thing. I will simply say.
Very upset, Jared. I'm very, very upset. I can go on a rant like this, or I should say a stampede, because I am Vash anyway. I'll save that for later, because I have massive issues with Bob Iger getting a window at Walt's original park in the center Emporium window right there. That just, I'm trying to keep it cool. Keep it cool.
You guys don't know, this is Vash really heated right now, and I just I'm the same way. I'm just like, I'll be glad when the Bob Iger glazing is done. We'll put it that way. I don't know when that is up on the contract, but surely sometime soon we will be done with having to tell how great Bob Iger was. But
speaking of villain,
and we talk about the backside there of Piston Peak, we had Villains Land, which the little backstory, and I'll let you go into this too, because obviously, and shout out to Vash. Vash did a lot of the homework on this. I was traveling, so I wasn't up to speed as much of this stuff. So you have been a wealth of knowledge on this. But we had talked about previously how we had that rap article come out that was saying this was going to be a Kronk coaster. It's going to be more kiddie friendly. And Bruce Vaughn, even on stage, said there's been a lot of rumors about this, kind of speaking to these things. And we had even speculated they're going to have to go into more detail than probably they wanted to kind of quell those rumors out there. And they did. Out of anything they revealed that we weren't expecting, they did give more details on this than really anything else, which is funny because this is the farthest thing out. I mean, it's got to be past 2030, which is interesting. But we did get some details on, apparently at this point, there's 2 rides, Maleficent Coaster and a dark boat ride that's going to take you to the catacombs of Maleficent's castle.
Not to correct you, Jared.
Oh, go ahead. I may be wrong.
They're saying dark ride. We'll get to that in just a moment, right?
Okay.
Let's go off the coaster first, because let's go off Villains Land in general. Villains Land's the name. So a lot of people were like, oh, is it going to have some crazy name like, Villains Edge or something? It's like, the Edge of Villainry or something. No, it's not going to do that. What they actually said on stage, actually, which was very interesting, was hey, why upset a good thing, right? Every other land in Magic Kingdom has land, so let's just do Villains Land. So
I actually agree with that, because everyone's going to call it Villains Land anyways. So I actually don't have an issue with the name of this land, to be honest. At least in my opinion.
I've been very critical of all of these convoluted names for all these different things for years now. Just make it simple, and sure enough, that's the route they chose, so I will give them credit for that. It is Villains Land. Land of the Villains, here you go. You can see right there, they Imagineering released a video on the coaster aspect itself right there. One of the things that they actually announced last night, as Jared beautifully pointed out right there. And you can see that it's going to be based around Maleficent. You're going to have an encounter, from what we understand, with Maleficent herself. They didn't provide clarity on that, but based on the concept artwork and based on everything that we're kind of hearing and everything like that, should be in her dragon form, which is interesting because Beastly Kingdom actually had a concept around a coaster going around a dragon, and it looks like some of that has been restored, which is kind of fun. It looks to be a coaster that is more traditional, right? It doesn't look like to be a spinning coaster. It doesn't look like to have drifting elements or inverts or anything like that. It seems to be like a traditional steel coaster. And so that might be because, right, as Braden mentioned before, they want to de-emphasize maybe airtime moments and so forth with those kind of, loose articles and all of that. And obviously this has to play to a somewhat larger crowd than maybe perhaps Velocicoaster. So they might be going with more of a Hagrid style family coaster, which makes a lot of sense for this. I don't see a lot of inversions. I do see some tight twists and turns, but I don't see a lot of inversions. I don't see a lot of crazy thrill elements right there. Maybe there will be. I'm not sure. I haven't examined this video all that closely. Well, it's just some
a lot of twists and turns around
traditional elements,
and things like that. Yeah,
exactly. And it does look like it's going to be like a kind of an enclosed coaster car, traditional coaster car, right? One lap bar, which doesn't necessarily mean there won't be inversions or any of those crazy elements. We've seen that actually with Velocicoaster, for example, but it does look like to be a more traditional coaster experience.
Yeah.
So fair enough. I think the biggest thing here, though, and you'll see these trees, which was the only thing they had, the Imagination Pavilion right there. So it was like Imagineering Pavilion. So it's kind of like, okay, like you said, Jared, so far off, we don't have anything. But they actually did share quite a bit, right? You saw all of the twisted architecture combined with that coaster right there, all of the thorns and everything else, very signature Maleficent. You saw these trees, which are inspired by the original 1937 Snow White, and her going through the kind of enchanted forest or dark forest or whatever they call it right there. And so the story for Villain's Land, I guess, is, in Fantasyland, you have a wishing well, right? Well, what if you had somebody actually make a wish that was dark in nature, and then that corruption through that wishing well actually spreads and basically corrupts or twists maybe a traditional kind of Fantasyland experience, which, by the way, Jared, that is exactly what fans were advocating for. That's exactly what I was advocating for.
I love it.
And OG55 and everybody else, right? It's like a twisted Fantasyland. That's what we want, and it looks like that's what we're getting. All those things good, like you said, answering that Drew Taylor article from The Wrap, suggesting that this was going to go in more of an Isle of Berk direction. No, this is more in the Dark Universe direction, and I think Dark Universe actually has a well there that is corrupted, so that's interesting as well.
They also did mention in the Dark Ride, going through the catacombs. Now, this could obviously, catacombs are not just with Dark Universe, but I think that was interesting, given that is something you do in Dark Universe, is go through the catacombs of the Frankenstein Manor. Mm-hmm. I do know, talking to some Imagineers a couple of years ago, at least, I mean, obviously they were going over to Dark Universe, so I do wonder how much. I'm not saying obviously catacombs are a thing, but it's interesting there. But from what you were saying, I love that wishing well idea. I think that's a great way to set up the center point of this. And
yes,
like you were saying, you don't have to get way too complicated with this stuff.
No,
just, simple is better with this. And when he said that, I was like, okay, I'm glad it wasn't like, listen, these guys are misunderstood, and I'm like, oh, don't do that, don't do the whole like misunderstood villain thing. Just villains that are villainy, because that's just what they are. I like that.
Exactly, right. Now, they did say something like, well, this is going to be maybe a different interpretation of the villain. And I'm like, oh, that's the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge thing. No. And Bruce Bunn actually said he compared this to the size and scale of Galaxy's Edge.
He brought up, that's the thing I was going to point out. On stage at D23 selling the most anticipated land you have, being like it's comparing it to Galaxy's Edge. Don't do that. That's a horrible... That made me really be like, I don't know about this now.
Right. It's like, oh my God, no. Are we making the same mistakes all over again? It's like, oh God, stop it. Stop bringing up Galaxy's Edge. You've already acknowledged that didn't work out, but no, the level of ambition, Jared, is going to be on that same level. We'll see all of that right there. I did not like the comparisons right there. Just Disney, just listen to me. Just give us the villains. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't go crazy. There's been so much great art produced by Disney Animation when it comes to people like Ursula, Maleficent, the Evil Queen, Jafar, the Magic Mirror. Just please, just look at that, focus on that, and just bring it to life. That's it. That's all we want. Just go.
I agree. And to Cliff's point here, Cliff has another 2 here. We will see voodoo in the land. What? Well, they didn't say voodoo. They did say Dr. Facilier, which I think is a very interesting distinction.
But they didn't say Dr. Facilier. They brought Dr. Facilier in the presentation.
They did say he was going to be in there, but they didn't say voodoo.
They didn't say voodoo. That's correct. Did not say voodoo. But Facilier, ironically...
You're not allowed on Tiana.
He's going to be at a land next door to Tiana's, but not in Tiana's. Only Disney can do this.
Like Beauty and the Beast land, Gaston. You're like, no, Villain's Land, sure. You're like, wait, what? Why? Yeah. I was happy. I've always felt it's so funny when they got out. They didn't use. Maybe it was with the story of after the movie, but it was like they didn't like the whole connotation of voodoo. And I'm like, but you still use him for Mickey's Not So Scary every single year as a big part of that selling point. And so I was glad to hear at least Dr. Facilier, and they weren't just going to completely, ghost him in this.
Right, exactly. Because Facilier, I've always said, is one of the best aspects of Princess and the Frog. It's so frustrating. We did not get him in a Princess and the Frog ride, but he is coming to the Magic Kingdom. Just across the street, which,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. All right, so let's talk about this dark ride, because boy, oh boy, has the internet been lit aflame over this whole thing. Okay, so you've examined the concept artwork showing this whole thing. Let me see if I can actually bring it up on the screen right now. Actually, right there, because it's very important that we bring this up so that everybody kind of knows.
Trees too. Those trees, I think those are cool the way they did those.
Sure. All right. All right. I'll pause it when this comes up in frame right here. But Villain's Land, over the book right there. Okay. It shows a boat vehicle. All right? A boat-shaped vehicle. But some people have sworn up and down that it's not about what you're seeing right there. And to to people who have been making this argument, Disney's been very adamant that this is not a boat ride, this is a dark ride. So, are we seeing either the Shanghai Pirates of the Caribbean type attraction system on display, or are we instead seeing a trackless ride vehicle made to look like a boat? Some people have taken the latter case for this because, it doesn't quite look like you're in water right there now, does it? It's very interesting. I
could see
concept
smoke,
artwork,
like smoke being around it to kind of like obscure your vision of it, like seemingly like you're in water, maybe.
Exactly, and the shape of the boats and everything like that, or boat-like vehicles, I should say, don't necessarily suggest a Shanghai style attraction. I should say Shanghai Pirates of the Caribbean style attraction, because I think those are like 5-seaters or six. 5 or 6 across and 6 long. I can't quite remember the configuration right there. This is a little bit smaller in that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So it's got a lot of people like, and you can see the lap bar configuration right there. It's kind of an interesting thing to note. What is this all going to be? I don't know, Jared. I'm kind of 50-50 on this. So you could make the argument it's a trackless ride vehicle. You can make the argument it's going to be Shanghai's Pirates of the Caribbean, but I'm not sure. But they're saying that this is going to be based around the Magic Mirror, which I think Jim Scholl was alluded to earlier in the week and so forth. Some people even saying like, hey, look at the edges of this vehicle, right? Is this going to be the same vehicle technology used with something like Infinity Defense or Tokyo's version of Peter Pan at Fantasy Springs? That's also something that could come into play here. We just don't know. So that's why I'm saying, guys, it's dark ride, at least for now.
Yeah.
It could be boat, but apparently that did deceive some people, and Disney's been very adamant this is a dark ride.
Well, we know they don't like water, so they're like, listen, we don't want
no water.
Like, we'll give you the illusion of water. But I think, like, if you're talking about what people want from this land, I think if you do have a solid coaster, and maybe this is and some people are asking, is there corkscrews? It looks like there's some corkscrews in here. I would imagine this is closer to a Slinky Dog Dash type of coaster than even remotely anything close to like a Velocicoaster for sure. Maybe kind of a Hagrid's, maybe on that level. Yeah, which I think would be great for this. And a dark ride. These are things that people like. And again, you keep it simple with the ride systems here. Although I think some people were they did say 2 rides. Now, I suppose they could expand this. Maybe they still, I don't know. Maybe the chance of it, Haunted Mansion still becoming part of it could be there. But that part could be underwhelming for people given how big this land is. And you're saying this has 2 rides and Piston Peak has 2 rides. And this is, how big is this area? I know Piston Peak's 4.5 acres. What is this one like?
Well, I think this was anywhere between like 8 to 14, something like that. So 14 would be on the level of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. 12 would be on the level of Radiator Springs Racers at Disney California Adventure. 8 would probably be roughly Avatar, maybe. So,
yeah, Avatar's about
something
8.
Like that.
So I wonder if there's 2 rides in here. Like, okay, and there's going to be other stuff because you got to think if there's that big of a land, there's going to be a lot of other things going on in here they didn't go into. So that part's interesting. But at the very least, they and shout out to Drew, the Disney dude. He was on Theme Parking and said that Drew Taylor article was bunk. That they've had these plans locked in for a while. He was completely right. So shout out to Drew. And so I think that this is a win for them in that area. I still contend it's going to be interesting to see how they placate that whole family friendly versus adult theming with this theming in this and everything. And maybe from this, now I don't know if this looks exactly like the original concept art. They did not show the original concept art when they were showing this, by the way. They showed some stuff with this. I do wonder about all those like mountain ridges around the whole land like they've shown before. I'm curious about that, but from what we're seeing here, I do think this looks pretty cool. And this is the land I've said it's kind of a shame they're opening at the very end because this is the most anticipated. I think this is the biggest needle mover that they have.
Yep.
And so this is definitely, if you're talking about any land they cannot mess up, it is Villain's Land.
It is Villain's Land. Every single thing hinges on Villain's Land. The perception of WDI as a whole, I think, hinges on Villain's Land. You screw this up, you're done. Like Universal's taking the crown and they just run with it. It's very interesting, Jared. I think, they did not invest meaningfully in Walt Disney World for a long time, as regularly as they probably should have. And now they're making up ground. But in doing so and pumping all these things out at once, are you spreading yourself too thin? It's a big question, right?
Yeah.
And the quality of these attractions. So we've seen some different decisions that maybe either of us wouldn't have made, and certainly some questionable ones, right? And it's still up for debate on whether or not they can really kind of, stick the landing when it comes to all this stuff. But Villain's Land, like, everything hinges on it, I'd say. This is a land that people have been waiting for 30 years plus. I mean, everybody is one to enter the realm of the villains. And there have been constant armchair Imagineers that have, drawn stuff out or conceptualized stuff and everything like that. And we know that the Imagineers themselves have been working on villains concepts for all that time. In fact, actually, the reason why a lot of people believe that the Shanghai Pirates of the Caribbean ride system was going to be featured here is because, well, that ride system that Pirates of the Caribbean eventually received in Shanghai was originally developed for a Villain's Land, for a villain's ride.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, okay, well, this is it. And it's unfortunate that it's going to be one of the last things added to Walt Disney World as a whole, but certainly Magic Kingdom. But it's one in which there is. This is the big one. This is the big one that everybody's waiting for, and Disneylanders included with that, I will say. Now, additionally, I think Glenn Close actually came on stage with very high pumps, by the way. I was shocked. But okay, she was in her Cruella de Vil outfit that she famously wore for the live-action version of
she was eating up all the scenery in her little bit, too. Just like, she was definitely ad-libbing on there a bit.
She was, and I will say it's pretty delicious. She's great, so I was okay with that one. In terms of comparison to all of the different segments, I think that one kind of worked the best.
I agree.
She won an Oscar, so. But she got up there and she said, "Oh, hey, that little handbag Maleficent gets a ride, and I don't. Hogwash, I'm getting a ride too." And everybody took that as, "Oh, wow, you're getting a ride," which is like any other ride, it's features a ride vehicle that you climb into in some way, and you're actually, push through a series of scenes or shows or tracks or whatever, right? That's what I think the general public believes a ride to be. Apparently, Disney came out afterwards, which, maybe why you don't have these comedy pics featuring Glenn Close actually announce stuff, right? They came out and said, "Oh, hold on." Apparently, it's going to be a layer. And we have no idea what that means. That's a very ambiguous language. Some people are saying meet and greet. Some people are saying like Enchanted Tales with Belle type experience. Don't know. But this is, maybe Glenn Close was a little fast and loose with the language right there. Not sure.
Yeah, or, would make a lot of sense. A villain's themed lounge is definitely something you could see as what they call a layer or something. I have no doubt they would put something like that in this land. Because I think that would just print them money. But I agree with everything you said, though. Like, this is something that they have to, out of anything they have to nail, this was the big one here. If they nail this and the other ones are just okay, I still think it works out pretty well for them. If this is this becomes kind of the anchor point of that part of Magic Kingdom. Yeah, because I think they also have plans for like an in-park hotel back here, things like that, in that villains themed hotel. So and there's even been concepts for a whole theme park based after villains. So
That's true.
There's a lot of things they could do into the future of this as well. But I will say, out of everything they announced, this was the most stuff where you're like, okay, like you do have a little bit of meat here, but I think they were kind of I don't believe if it wasn't for that rap article and how much traction that got, I don't think they would have came out and revealed as much stuff here for that reason. It was just weird because like we barely got anything on these other things opening supposedly within a couple of years, and this one's way off. We get more information, so I think obviously that's why they did that. But they did set the record straight that this is the direction it's going. That is going to alleviate them a lot of stuff on this. But I think overall, with everything they did announce, they kind of left themselves open to a lot of speculation with what they did announce, in just the way in which they delivered it. Coming soon. I mean, this thing, it's just like, what is this? What does half this stuff even mean, sort of thing? But I think I do wonder, and I've argued many times, Disney would be good to kind of get away from. I always call them these Apple events where people get together to expect it. I do wonder if maybe they have more of an idea of stringing these things out at different times, not everything just around a D23, and maybe D23 becomes, you get some clarification of things. It's more of a show, but we're not going to have this be the Super Bowl of theme park announcements and get the fan base sort of off that gravy train, which is not going to be a simple thing because that's what they've been trained for all these years.
Yeah.
I do wonder about that because this show definitely was interesting in terms of how it went, what they showed, and really how, I guess you just say surface level the whole thing kind of was outside of Villains Land and a few other things they showed.
I mean, to your point, it's just not the best format, and maybe they're thinking like, maybe we should switch it up a little bit, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they do. I mean, that could involve just like, hey, having a bunch of panels strewn throughout D23 and announcing certain things there. It could be, like you said, more Disney Parks blog posts, maybe Destination D23 type announcements where these things are shared amongst the two. I don't know, but it's just, man, this last show was awful in terms of its format, in terms of its production, right? I think it could have gone a lot better, and certainly we are hoping for improvements in this regard going forward. I think Jared is correct. They might be shifting in how they approach these things. We'll see, but this is definitely the anchor of not just Magic Kingdom, I would say, of this era of Imagineering. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they actually have in store for us. I think they're on the right track, though. I think this is good. Like more of this, please. And I think they're going to be all right there. A couple of smaller announcements, then we got to get out of here because we are well over 3 hours. Yeah, taking up way too much Jared's time. When I said, hey, we should do this, I don't think he was quite in for a 3-hour show like this.
I knew it was going to be a long one, so I'm good because honestly, like you've helped me catch it. So obviously, like I watched it, but I wasn't able to really dig into this. So this has helped me a lot understanding this as well, and a lot more of the details of this stuff. But no, I figured this would be a long one with all the stuff that we had to go through. So no worries on my end.
It was, well, I'm glad to be of service because it also helps me kind of go over this myself right here because, obviously we're going to be working off some of these concepts for quite a bit of time now. I think we have, we'll end with Carousel of Progress right here, which they did actually announce some details regarding this whole thing. Apparently the big thing outside of the Disney Parks blog post that went into basically what we're getting and all of that is that Jamie Lee Curtis and Bryan Cranston will play mother and father respectively right there. So it's an interesting casting choice. I think Bryan Cranston, I can basically do anything, but Jamie Lee Curtis, that was surprising. Now apparently there was a clip taken from, I believe, 2024 where Jamie Lee Curtis actually received her Disney Legends Award, in which she actually sang the Great Big Beauty for Tomorrow song with the crowd, and the crowd got involved and all of that kind of stuff. So she has at least some idea of what this is. So that's interesting. Right. Maybe she's a big fan. Not sure. But I think it's, it's like, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis, Bryan Cranston. It wouldn't have been at the top of my casting sheet there. But
yeah, I mean, I agree. Bryan Cranston can kind of do anything. He's got a good voice. I will say, if they're looking for good marketing for this attraction, they put Jamie Lee Curtis out there like she did for Freakier Friday. She might win some people over with this new mom. I'm just saying, she kind of caused a little bit of a stir online. We were like, wait a minute, hold on a second here, Jamie Lee. But, people don't
now I remember what you're referring to. Yeah, well, that's true. That was Surprising, to say the least.
I'll bring up a visual representation here just to show people what I'm talking about here. Listen, it's just, this is for research purposes. We're running a family friendly, but she did go listen, it was a press screening. I mean, if she comes out like this, hey, maybe people get on board a lot quicker. I'm just, never know.
It was very surprising. She would wear anything like that, but there you go. It's like,
I remember when I saw that, I was like, it's got to be AI that was real. And it was just like, okay, all right, I guess that's the way we're going.
Hey, you can sell products in any which way or how. And some marketing firms and some actors and so forth take different approaches. And this was the approach that Jamie Lee Curtis took. And
yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
There you go, right there. It's just really something. But now you'll note that Mother, or Sarah?
I think it's Sarah.
Yeah, that's going to be featured here. She's going to be the host of some of these segments, including the 80s scene, 1980s scene, taking over from Father there, or John, from the 1960s scene. So it makes sense that you want both actors to be of some cachet and considerable performance standard, because she's... It's a classic audio animatronic production, and so you're going to have to, captivate people in the audience right there. Jamie Lee Curtis, there you go, baby. She's wearing that, perhaps, but I don't think they're going to go that route. We'll see. I know with the 1980s sequence, they're going to go with the big hair and the suits and stuff that women of business were wearing back in those days. So we'll see. But they did show some concepts there. Again, not a whole lot, but just to whet everybody's appetite. There you go. And I think the sleeper hit, and I don't have any visuals of this, so I do apologize, but the big, sleeper hit, I should say, would be the fact that Space Mountain from Earth to the Moon over there at Disneyland Paris will be restored. I think that's a big win. Disneyland Paris fans have been clamoring for that for years. It's been Hyperspace Mountain for a long time. And even before then, it was, Mission 2 or something like that? Like, just, sorry representations of Space Mountain type concepts following the great Jules Verne original right there with that amazing soundtrack. They did say they were going to restore that. They're going to restore it to its original form, which I think is very, very cool.
Yeah, I agree. I still have the same questions I have about Carousel Progress that we've all had, which is, don't screw this up, please. Just don't mess up this thing. They didn't have anything about the wall animatronic. They really didn't have anything about this other than what you're seeing right here. So that was interesting, because this is supposed to open next year. I guess so. They didn't really say. So again, we're left to read between the lines. Maybe they have a lot. Listen, I imagine Disney Parks blogs have a lot of maybe heavy lifting this week to kind of fill in some of these details. And maybe that is the strategy going forward, is the way they're going to kind of tease you out there and then get the actual tidbits about this through various outlets. We'll see what they do. They have actually now, they kind of revamped the marketing department. So maybe this becomes more of a heavy lifting of them. We'll see on that front. Now, obviously, didn't get anything about Space Mountain for Disney World. Didn't get anything about the Play Pavilion. Didn't get anything. I'm trying to think of it. I mean, and what's funny about Space Mountain was one thing.
I was going to say no Phantasmic, there was a couple of other odds and ends that people had on there, kind of like, they're going to cover this, and they just didn't. So please go ahead.
No, and I think that it doesn't. Now that'll be interesting. Does that mean those projects aren't happening, or they, maybe they still release them? Because there was the most rumors out there about Space Mountain. I mean, that probably had the most smoke out there. The Spaceship Earth thing to me was, I thought I was reaching a little bit. I was like, I could see it maybe but obviously they announced that. So we'll see.
It caused Braden to find his password to his YouTube channel and actually make a video. I mean, that's how big this thing was, guys. Come on. No, sorry. Good.
Finally found it. I wish he would do more. He does good work. Shout out to Braden. He actually showed him editing his video, and I'm like, that's a lot more clips than that. Like all the video, all the overlays. I'm like, I know how much work that is right there. So he's definitely putting in the work for that one. So shout out to Braden. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's an interesting angle with this year's D23. It's one of those where either you could read a lot into it, or this is just an off year, and they're just like, we're going to give you some stuff, but we don't have a whole lot here. But I will say, all you, me, OG, conductor, all of us were that, in our sphere talking, nobody was really anticipating a huge announcements of this thing. And I think that definitely fit into this of what to expect. Even Disney before this event was kind of tamping down expectations themselves. So it definitely lived up to that end of it. And I suppose we'll see, in the coming years, how they kind of treat D23 for this type of stuff nonetheless. But no, I mean, that's what we got. A lot of read between the lines, a lot of speculation. And if Disney was trying to squelch speculation, maybe they did on Villain's Land, but everything else is kind of like, wait a minute, when's this coming? And again, maybe by tomorrow they have some announcements on Disney Parks blog about some of this stuff. But that'll be very interesting to see how they relay that information there. But this has been very good. And thank you, everybody in here. We almost had 300 people in here hanging out on a random stream on a Sunday. So thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun. And thank you, Vash, again. Vash always comes in with the B-roll and his homework and filling in the details there. But yeah, we were over 3 hours and 20 minutes. It's probably the longest live stream we've ever done on this.
I think so. Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot here, but it'll be good info here. But before we get out of here, though, Elisa, that may be watching, where can everybody find you out there on the internet, on YouTube, over there at Vash Sky ParkCast?
Vash Sky ParkCast is the best place to find me. We just had that watch along party last night. That was pretty cool with Bro right there. We should have far more content going over D23 over the coming week because we break this kind of stuff down. And as more announcements may actually come out, that should be very, very interesting. And you can bet you're going to have a little bit of a rant or a stampede talking about Bob Iger getting a window on Main Street. That's probably going to be Wednesday's show right there following that Park Place. Again, that's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then obviously Thursdays we have another live stream 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays right there. And Vash and Vixen, we had a special Vash and Vixen going over D23 and the events related to it. We're probably going to do a Vash and Vixen all about Autopia. If in fact they get rid of it, well, we have to cover its history. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun as well. So keep track of that right there. I think we're going to be on Theme Park Wizards channel tomorrow. I think he's targeting like a 7 p.m. Start time for his show, if I'm not mistaken. That's California time, so 10 p.m. Eastern right there. So you can see a lot from me. Obviously, I'm on X and everywhere else. But Jared, thank you so much for having me, come on here and take people through this and everything. I know, this kind of quickly came together, and your flexibility in all of this was really, really helpful. So very much appreciate you. And hey, Capture Magic is awesome. If you happen to be on Vash Sky ParkCast watching this, go ahead and subscribe. And maybe if you're on, Capture the Magic, and subscribe to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Vash is a wealth of knowledge. So yeah, if you're not subscribed to Vash, go check him out. Does a great work over there, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of stuff to go over on Tuesday for theme parking as well. Because I do imagine the same thing. They're gonna have some stuff that release between now and then, and so we might have some clarification on some things there. But yeah, if you're watching on Vash's end, you can find me at Cap the Magic. Same thing, breaking this stuff down. Usually daily videos here. And go ahead.
Are we thinking theme parking for Tuesday?
I believe. I mean, if you're doing, especially if you're doing Wizard tomorrow, that probably wouldn't coincide anyway. So maybe if OG wants to do a stream, I might hop on it with him. But I think at this point, tentatively we'll say still Tuesday. We'll see there. But
yeah, because we covered like a lot.
We covered a ton here. I think and I think there will be some more stuff, maybe that could change some of these conversations going there. But we'll see. We'll play that one by ear. But there'll be plenty of coverage on Vash and here and OG and everybody else there. But yeah, you can find me at Captain Magic, and then my wife and I will have a full podcast episode about this. We're going to move the schedule. Actually, normally Thursdays is the Disney show. We're going to move that to Tuesday. Have a full breakdown of this, get her opinions there. So you can go check that out at CTM Podcast here as well, which that channel is doing really well. That one's kind of started like maybe a year, 2 years ago, and almost 2,000 subs over there. So it's growing over there. So go check that out. And Jamie's got she had some interesting thoughts about Bob Iger as well. Cause she's kind of joined me on the Bob Iger, like what's going on here train. And she's like, why does he get a window? I'm like, that's a great question. I don't know why he gets a window on Disneyland's Main Street there, but not to anger Vash anymore. I don't want to. We'll be here till 1 a.m. on our end, which exactly. I want to see a full Vash stampede. So I'm here for it, but that's where you can find coverage this week on all this stuff. And all the weeks. We always break this stuff down in great detail, whatever's going on in the theme park. So be sure to check that out. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for the super chats. Everybody in the chat for hanging out here. We had Cliff Flicks with multiples here. Sorbic Sorcerer, Stu My Rick, One Magical Spot. Spark. We had, let's see, Webba was in here. What's up, Webba? I forgot to mention Webba was in here. We had Lucas Witt and Steve Mammon. I think I got the F2TM22 and everything like that. So thank you guys for the super chat. It's always appreciated, never expected, and appreciate the support there and you guys just hanging out with us here. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you guys later. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.